Hi, Nitish. Hello, everyone.
Hello. So quiet here.
Yeah.
Like I think the first bootcamp I joined was back in December,
Uh-huh.
almost a year ago. And then it would be never quiet, People would be like talking to each other, asking questions. Like even whenever you were taking breaks, they would just talk to the instructor. We talk with the instructor, um, even like just general, like anything. Um, so it was like really engaging, like everyone would enjoy just to be in the session.
Yeah, so anyone, if there is any question to Nitish, you can just please ask to him. He is with us.
Yeah, feel
Alan,
free. Like
Priyanka. Yeah.
1 year ago I didn't know React. And like
Uh,
1 year after that, now I look back, I'm working on this code base for NFL, NBA, and La Liga. Like it's been almost a year, and then I've been working with them for a year now. So I think Mukund, you are on mute. I can't hear you.
yeah,
Oh,
Mukundaji.
Yeah.
Arjun.
Oh, I thought you were
Azure.
speaking. That's
No, no, actually,
okay.
I just
Oh,
joined
okay.
and
Yeah.
started since you guys are talking, so I just kept quiet.
That's fine. Yeah, like I started. I didn't know what was React 1 year ago. Um, Now like when I look back, like time goes so fast. I took this bootcamp like in December, and then I got my job on March, and then I started working for them from March. Now it's already December, end of the year. So I'll
So what
be
was your background, Nitish? Are
yeah.
you
I
from
I
computer
studied
science?
yeah I studied computer science, but like I was really having difficulty in programming because in school we had like one class in Java, one class in C, another class in C++. Like I
Mhm.
never learned JavaScript. And after I only looked at JavaScript after I graduated. So like I never did front end. Like I I did one or two courses on like building mobile app, like using Java. I did a little bit of Swift,
Why do
but
you
like
use C++? What is the application for C++?
C++ is like you use C++, when you are building games, right? Because uh, the games should not be laggy, right? Whenever if you use JavaScript, it has to go through the computer, it has to compile, change the JavaScript into machine language, and then machine language has to like change into assembly, and assembly has to change into machine language, and then it is going to understand JavaScript, right? So whenever you are making a game, like every action should be fast, right? It should be smooth. So they use C++ or C sharp
Is it
because it is a
somehow be applied in the hardware, like a
yes,
motherboard and anything?
yes.
Okay.
You can do Internet of Things like Alexa, like Google Home, like everything. You can program them using C++, C sharp, or Java.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you enjoy React more than the C++ and
Yes. I cried. Like I almost failed my C++ class. So yes, C++
okay.
for me. Yeah. Okay. Let's
I have a
develop up.
question.
Yes.
What college did you go to? Because I was the same way.
Uh-huh.
It was heavily on C++, Java,
Uh-huh.
data structures. I didn't do
Yeah.
any front end until after college either.
Yeah, I went to Minnesota State, and then
Okay.
I transferred to Wilmington in Delaware, and then I graduated from Wilmington because I wanted to graduate early. It was
Mm-hmm.
cheap, and then yeah, everything was remote, so
Okay.
You got
Yeah,
your
I went to
master's or
a state
bachelor's?
school in New York.
bachelor's.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went to college in New York and it was the same way. They didn't really
Mhm.
do much front end. It was mostly the first language they taught was
Yeah.
Java, then
Yeah.
data
Mhm.
structures, then they taught C++, and then
Yeah. I only,
we did a little bit of Kotlin, but no
yeah.
front end.
Yeah, same thing. I only took one class in JavaScript in my final year, and then there was this professor who was working for JP Morgan, right? And then he was coming, like he was like outside professor. You just come for our class and then you just leave because he was working, and that's
Yeah.
how I like kind of got interested into front end development in the first place. Uh,
When you started working for NFL in La
mhm,
Liga, like the first
mhm.
couple months, do they have you go straight into working on projects, or do they start you off small and kind of work your way up?
So the way they do is you have the code base, right? You have
Yeah.
like different sessions. They we have like a study group every 1 hour every week where people come together, like front end people, and then the one of the guys is going to talk about some topic, right? It's just generally anything that is related to the code base. And then you are going to have so many people that are going to share their code base, and they're going to give you like heads up, hey, we follow this pattern. These, if you are looking for something like this, you have to look into this folder, or like these are the technology that we use. And then they kind of gives you small tasks like, hey, like we need to change some styling on this part. And then from there, like they slowly try to integrate you, like when they slowly want you to understand the code base, but like they won't give you the task, like very heavy tasks right away. So I had like almost like a month time just to study code base, take small tickets, and then go on from there.
Okay, so they didn't start you off with context API tasks or anything.
No.
It was small, change small stuff here,
Yeah.
and then as you learn the code base, then they give
Mhm.
you bigger tasks.
Yeah.
Okay, because I've heard some places where they throw people right away in and it can get
Mhm.
overwhelming quick.
So I think bigger school, if it is like a fresh code base, they just started and then you just got hired and then it's from the beginning,
Yeah.
then they might expect you to take initiative and like like
Yeah,
work on the
because they
code
don't
base.
have as many
Yeah.
software engineers or developers there, but a bigger
Yeah.
company is not going to have that
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah, a bigger company wants to retain you for a longer time, right? They don't
Yeah.
want you to like just throw you off the bus. That's why they're going to give you time. They're going to have meetings. They're going to show you around the code base. They are going to give you like access to study materials. Like in my
Hmm.
case, we had access to egghead.io subscription, premium subscription. So like we were given like access if we wanted to learn any topic like React, TypeScript, anything. And then we are given that opportunity and time to like just understand code base in general. So
Okay, that's good.
yeah, cool. Let's just go ahead and start. For today, like uh, Gorak will be continuing on his topic, which was a feedback form, but like I'm going to be like talking about more general React and the React libraries. So whenever you do contact feedback forms or like any other project, like you can go ahead and implement these things right away in your own project or applications, right? Uh, So today's topic is like basically routing. How do we do routing in React, or like how do you build a navigation in a website? Because as a React developer, either you go to any company, right? You are working on the front end, right? So you are working with websites, and websites are going to have navigations, right? So this is like a really important topic. Um, so we are going to figure out like what routing is, how do you implement routing in React? Because mostly you have learned about use state, hooks, React all the time, but like I don't think you went through the topic of routing, if I'm not wrong. Did you guys like
Y-
had any sessions on React routing?
No, we
No.
haven't.
No.
Okay, cool, awesome. All right, so
Yeah.
basically,
Mhm.
what is a routing, right? What is routing?
Hi, Nitish.
Hi.
So we have the organizer team, management team here. So there
Mhm.
is one small program.
Okay.
So yes,
That's
Okay.
clear. Let's go
can
ahead.
we?
Yeah.
Yes, here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Prashad. Hi, Sambu.
Yeah, hi Nirusha. Thank you. Thanks for giving this opportunity. Hi Nitish. Sorry to interrupt your session. So we will
That's
not
fine.
take much time of yours. Hardly we'll complete this announcement within next 5 to 10 minutes. Before we start, let me introduce myself. Hi team. This is Prasad, manager for the bootcamp enrollment and operations, and we also have Shambhu Adhikari, operations manager for our bootcamp team. Shambhu, you can introduce yourself.
Oh, hi team. My name is Shambhu and yeah, Prasad. So we are here for the short announcement. Will not take much time. So yeah, we can go ahead, Prasad.
Okay. So team, I think initial time we did not get a chance to have a discussion on this. So actually in our TACO for every boot camp, we have this particular kind of program, which is student of the boot camp and student of the biweekly sprint. So what does this mean? Like student of the biweekly sprint in the sense, so every 2 weeks we'll be selecting one best candidate from our team itself. Depends upon the suggestions, feedback we receive from our SMEs, and also related to their assignment submissions, their attendance regularity, and interaction during the sessions. So here in this boot camp, I have noticed like lots of candidates are showing really good interest towards learning the topics in front end technology, and also the classes are also being very interactive. But end of the day we have to choose like the names, right? So no partialities here. Basing upon the suggestions we have got from our SMEs, we have decided these winners. So till now we have completed 4 weeks. I mean, we are almost done with our fifth week also. So we are left with 5 more weeks. So for this first 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, so for the first 4 weeks we have two winners. So let me quickly share my screen, and we can announce the winners right away. So I hope everyone will definitely participate in this boot camp till the end, and learn as much as possible from this boot camp. I mean, our SME, main SME Gorak, he's really a good trainer. He can give you like very good support related to front end technology learning part. And also Nitish Kafle, he's also one of our senior React front end developer. In case if you people need any kind of technical support, technical knowledge, or any guidance related to front end, you can definitely reach out to them. And I really appreciate Nirusha in hosting this boot camp. So let me quickly share my screen. Team, please let me know once you can see my screen. Everybody can
Yeah.
see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. So student of the bi-weekly sprint for our front-end development bootcamp, FDB4. So as I told, we request only one thing from all our team members here. So attend the classes regularly and learn as much as possible you can. Not only during the bootcamp, I also suggest like during your free time and during your weekends, please practice a lot. So the more you practice, definitely you can understand the topics very easily. In case if you stuck up anywhere, please reach out to our SMEs. They'll surely help you on that. So moving on to the winners. So here we are. For the week 1 and 2, we have Peter Nabiswa, and for the week 3 and 4, we have Sahaj Shrestha. So congratulations, both of you. I really appreciate your active participation in our bootcamp. So kudos to both of you. I really appreciate like uh, uh, being part of our boot camp. So still we have 5 more weeks. As I said, we can have 3 more winners, and along with that, student of the boot camp. So for the entire boot camp, we would select one particular person as well, and that person also will get a reward from TACU related to this front end developer boot camp. So these gifts which we distribute uh, might not be a huge worth gifts, but definitely it will be helpful for your daily usage kind of products. So these are to mainly motivate among ourselves, and definitely I hope it will inspire us like to be more interactive during the sessions. So that's the main reason we have been conducting the student of the biweekly sprint. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you for giving this opportunity, and congratulations to both the winners. So yeah, that's all I have from my side. Shambhuji, would you like to add anything?
No, Prasad, that's all from our side. Best wishes, keep learning, keep growing, guys. We are here if there is any confusion. Nitish is there, so even our SMEs is there. So please cooperate and feel free if you have anything with any issues. Thank you. Thank you, Prasad.
Thank
Over
you.
to you.
Thank you, Shambhuji. Thank you. So thank you so much, guys. Really congratulate both Peter and Sahaj. Still, we are expecting many more winners in this boot camp, and let's have this boot camp as the best one. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Prasad. Congrats,
Yeah.
Peter and Sahaj.
Thank you, Nitish. Prasad.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Nirusha, you can, Peter and Sahaj, if you are fine sharing your address, you can give those details to Nirusha like individually. She'll update in our team's database. So there is one specific team who are going to deliver the gifts to your particular location itself.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah,
Thank you so
sure,
much.
Prashant.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one. Yeah, Nitish, you can continue. Sorry for taking much time of your session.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. Thank you, Sambhu.
All right. Let's see. Let's pick up where we were at. So we were talking about routing, right? So in React or in any web technology, like routing is basically navigation, right? Like either it can be a navigation or it can be a button that can take you from one place to another, right? So as a React developer, you are going to be working with web, right? You are going to be working on the browser. You are going to be working with application that is going to have navigation. So once you are a React developer, you work with React, and then you go into a code base that doesn't have a navigation. I don't think so. Like you'll never encounter that phase or that particular scenario. So let's look into some of the examples of routing, and then we'll go like more deep into like what do we use in order to use routing in React, or like and then we'll see like what kind of libraries do we use, right? So one example is Airbnb, right? So it is built using React, right? So this page is using a production build of React. So Airbnb uses React. So if you see like if we click anything here, we see that the URL changes, right? And then we are taken into different page. We can say like it's the same one single page application. React, you use React to only build one single page application. It is one single page, but whenever you click these components, it's re-rendering only these components, right? So we have headers, we have like navigations, we still have this, but like our content is changing based on the navigation, right? As we change our navigation, our content is basically changing. So that is what routing is, right? So but in terms of React, when you look into React, right? So uh, even in Facebook developed React, and then if we see like Facebook also has different kind of routing, right? For example, right now we have a URL, we go into like different tabs, the URL is going to change and it is going to render some different components, right? Events, it's going to render some different component, and again inside of this we have other routing. So how do we implement routing in React? So that is what we're going to be talking about. So let's look into like routing in React, right? So in React, but until now, every single day when you are coming to a session, you are listening that React is a functional React is nothing but a function, right? It is everything in React is a component, right? And a component is a function, right? Because it returns either a JSX or a function, right? So, but in terms of routing, React has no inbuilt library for that. So without using any third-party library, you cannot implement routing in React unless you use JavaScript, right? So JavaScript, right, like window object, right? So for example, if we look into console, and then we have something called window, right? And window is an object. It's a global object, right? So what window does is it keeps track. It has something called window.location, and this is what it keeps track, right? So whenever you are on a website and you press back, how do you know like you were coming from that routing? For example, here if we see I'm coming from my window location is routing.pdf, right? It's basically coming from desktop, right? So this is my routing, right? So under the hood, even React or any other library is using this window.location object, right? It's using window object. And who provides us the window object? It's basically the browser, right? So browser has that object. Like origin is like where did it originate? It originated from a file. So you can see this is the origination. So it can be like HTTP, can be a origin, right? Because whenever we fetch a website, we are fetching it from HTTP, right? And what kind of protocol? Like protocol again, like is it like what kind of protocol are we using? We are using a file. We could be using HTTP, HTTPS. We could be using SSH, right? And the host. Currently, we don't have any host because we are basically opening a PDF file, right? So, but it also has a route, right? For example, if we go into let's look into Airbnb again, but this time let's look into its window object, right? So if we look into its window object, what do we see, right? Window.location, right? If we look into its object, now we see some information, right? We see some information. We get object, we get value. So it is hosted, it is hosted on airbnb.com, right? The host name is airbnb.com. We have a href. The origin is the initial landing page. The origin is airbnb.com. The path is / because HTTP is a protocol and it is transferring airbnb.com over HTTP request, right? Protocol is HTTPS, right? So we are under the hood. I just want you to like have a general idea that under the hood, everything is JavaScript. And then we are basically using window.location. Whenever we are using other libraries, we are implementing routing. Under the hood, it's all about window.location in a browser, right? So in React, we have this library called React Router, right? Routing in React is we use React Router, which is a standard library. Now React router doesn't come with React, right? We need to install it. It is external. React team didn't made React router. It is some different other teams, right? So it is an external library. So somebody else made React router. So why do we use React router? It's because like you see, like we have over 1 billion downloads on npm. Everybody is using React router to implement routing. We have like this many repository that is dependent on React routing. We have like almost 49,000 GitHub start. That means it is a reputable source. It is a reputable open source. So we are going to be using this React router, and in order we'll see like how we install it and how in general, like today the main session is how to use, not how to use React router, but in general how to use other JavaScript libraries in React, right? So so before we start, before you look into the code, I just want you to understand like 4 different things that a React Router DOM has that is going to be necessary in order us to implement any features, right? So it has because it is a library, it is a React-based library. It's React Router DOM. In React, everything is a component, right? So whenever we use anything from this library, these are also going to be a component, right? So browser router is going to be a component, routes going to be component, route is going to be component, and link is also going to be component. So here's what I want you to understand. Whenever we are using anything from React Router DOM, it's a component. That component can be a function, right? Like, for example, we created our own hook, right? That's a function. And then we used it in our component, right? But the way, what I want you to understand is in React, everything is a component, right? So we have this component called a browser router, which uses HTML5 history API. So what does HTML5 history API means? It means window.location, right? Window.history, window.location.history, right? So that is HTML, right? That is provided by the browser, right? It is keeping track of our routes in the browser, right? So it can be on Chrome, it can be in Safari, any browser you go, you'll have HTML5 history API, right? So it uses HTML5 history API under the hood. And then we have another component called routes. And this is only going to render the first route, right? So what does it mean? When I showed you, when I console logged, let's see, console, when I show you window.location, we have something called origin, right? Where did it originated from? What is the initial landing page, or what is the index, right? So this origin route script tracks of this origin. So it is only going to render this origin, right? Route is going to keep only track of the index file, or like the main home page, right? And then we have another called route, right? So think of it as like this has the higher priority, and then you come down, and then we have routes, and then we have route. So route is, we can now use some functions or props to conditionally show component if our path matches the current URL. For example, if we are on this, let's say we are on this now. Hey, I want to go into tutorial. So if I click here, and if my path matches tutorial, then show me this component, right? So that's a condition, right? That's an if condition. So those conditions, if we want to render any of the navigation thing or a component based on a condition, we use route, right? And then we have link. So link is used to create a link, right? It is used to create a link. Think of it as an anchor tag. Whatever anchor tag does, link does the same thing. But why do we use link instead of anchor tag? Again, in React, there is one key difference. Whenever you create an HTML document and you put an anchor tag and then you link it to another page, it doesn't matter. We are going to look into it, but anchor tag is going to refresh your whole page, whole application, right? But link is not going to refresh your whole application. And in React, we do not want to refresh our application, because refreshing our application means we are running lifecycle methods again and again. That means it is impacting our performance, right? So now we are going to look into code. We are going to create a basic router and then a basic navigation, and then we are going to go on from there. But so far, in terms of just basic understanding, you guys got the concept of what a routing is. What do we use React Router DOM or React Router in React in order to implement navigation, because React doesn't have that inbuilt. We need to use a third-party service, right? And when we do that, when you look into this, this is also going to like let you know, like, hey, like this is how we use third-party libraries in React, because in React there are like thousands and millions of third-party libraries, right? If you go into npm, you have so many libraries, right? Let's say just React, right? If I just search React, I have so many libraries, right? I have almost 219,000 packages, right? That is based on React, including React itself, right? So we need to be able to like know like how, whenever we use any packages, how do we implement things? How do we implement third-party libraries, right? So that's really important. Now I'm going to create a React app, npx. You can use Byte if you are using that. That's fine. I'm used to creating React app using npx. npm React app, and then we are going to say React router demo, right? We'll create a basic app, and then we'll see like how we install or how we use any third-party library. So it is pretty basic, but once you know that, you can go ahead and use any libraries you want, right? For example, you don't need to create your own form by yourself, right? You have to write your form components, right? Because we have another third-party library called Formic that is going to do that for you. So you can directly implement it, right? So it is easier and faster to develop, right? So now once you go into the code base, once you start working and you go and see their package Once you go and see that package.json, you are going to be surprised how many packages they use, right? They use like almost hundreds of different packages. So let's see, this is pretty standard React app. We are going to need index.js. I'm going to pull that outside and I'm going to delete the source folder. I don't need that source folder. I'm going to create another source folder. I'm going to have index.js. The reason is there are so many things that I don't need. So I'm basically just removing things. All right, so pretty basic. And we are going to create app.js and a simple app component, exported, imported, and then we are going to run. Let's see. npm run start. Right. Okay, we have our React app. If you guys like have any confusion, just feel free to speak up. Okay, like feel free to like ask questions. This is going to be pretty standard. So in order to implement our React router, we need to install a package from React router DOM, right? From React router. So this is like what we do every day. We go into documentation and we have something called tutorial, and then it is going to tell you, hey, like in order to install it, you are going to have a set of instruction, and then you can, it's using Vite, it's fine. I'm using npm, same thing. And then it is going to say like, hey, you want to install React router DOM, you can install it like using npm, right? So I'm going to install React router DOM, and then it is going to be npm install. If you have yarn, it is going to be yarn add, and then it is going to be React router DOM, right? And the name has to match, right? It has to be exact, because there are so many packages. If you write DOME, there is somebody else who created this package, right? So okay. All right, we got the package. We go into package.json to verify. We are going to look into our dependencies, and then we have React router DOM, right? So we have React router DOM. That means we have our package installed. So whenever we install our package, everything, all the packages is going to be stored in node modules. That means like if you go here and search, we did React router DOM. So going to R, React.
Nitish.
Yes.
What's the command that you use to download that? Because you're going so fast, I'm trying to catch up.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's a very good question. So I'm using npm, right? So I go into this tutorial. They have something called npm install, or I can go into npm.js, and then because I'm looking for React router DOM. So once I go here, you can also see like you can see in order to install, you are going to write npm I means install, or you can write install and then the name of the package, right? If you are using yarn, you have to do yarn add React router DOM, right? So
yes,
React router DOM. So it is npm I React router DOM, and then let's see. Okay, so once we have installed it, now we have access to React router DOM, right? Now we have access to React router DOM. So for now, let's basically go through React router DOM. Let's go through browser router, route and link. I told you like everything is a component in React. So if you are going to use this from React router DOM, we are going to basically import these things, right? So I have already installed React router DOM. That means I have access to React router DOM from React router DOM, right? So I have access to this package because it's in node modules, right? Because I've already installed it. So I need, whenever I'm performing routing in React and I'm using React router DOM, I need these 4 components. Like that's like necessary step. Like that's necessary. I need this. I might not need link for now. I'll come back to link later, but I need these 3 components, right? I need it. Without that, I'm not able to. React doesn't have anything inbuilt, so we are not able to. So whenever I write, it gives me browser router, we have routes, and then we have routes, right? So pretty self-explanatory. It means it routes. It is a function. It is a function that gives us access to window element, right? You see, if you hover it on your VS Code, it's going to give you some information about it. So I already showed you on console log, by consoling log, that we had something called window object, and then we had something called window.location. We have something called window.history. So this has access to window. That means this has access to this URL, like it is going to help us have that access to this. So this is nothing more than a function. If you look into it, a window is an object of window. So a window is containing a DOM document, right? The document property points to the DOM document loaded in that window. That means that window is basically nothing more than window, right? This window. So this is giving us access to this window. So now we also have window.history, right? That means how many times I went back, how many times can I go back, and then how many times I went forward. That's how, like, whenever you are browsing through a website, you can go back multiple times, you can go forward multiple times, because window is keeping track, window.history is keeping track. And then we have routes, and routes is a container for a nested tree of elements that renders the branch. But now see what happens. Browser router has access to window, routes has access to location. That means window.location, right? And then route has access to, let's say, what do we have access to? A URL path, right? A URL path. That means let's see again. So browser router have access to window, and then routes have access to window.location, right? Yes, window.location, and then route has access to certain URL path. So what is the URL path? It's href, right? So routes has access to window.location.href, right? So we need all of these things to work with it, right? Because in order to access href, we need location, and in order to access location, we need a window. So these components are very important. Like you need to know about these components. Even if you don't know, not a problem. You can always go into the documentation, and then you can look into it, and then it's going to say, hey, like I have something, we need something to implement, and that is called, let's see, it is creating browser route. We don't need to know about creating a browser route for now, because we are basically only going to look into routing examples. Let's see. To refer to example, app.js. It says go to app.js. Okay. Basic source app.tsx is the same thing. Now see, it has access to routes, route, and link, right? So anywhere you see any code base, you see you'll have access to routes whenever you are using router DOM. What main.tsx, it has access to browser router. See, we need browser router because it is like a parent. And now inside we have app. That means after browser routers, if we go into app, comes routes, and then comes route, right? So it's like parent and children. So we'll use that browser routes and everything. Like think of, let's implement it, right? So we need browser router. We need to wrap everything inside of our browser router because we need to be able to navigate, right? And then now we have access to window property, right? Now we know we can get everything that a window can give us. Now we need access to window.location, right? So we have routes, and then now we can specify a URL, right? So we have route. So route also has a prop because these are components. Component can take props, right? Component can take props. So route has a prop called path, and this path is where you basically tell the browser what kind of path it is, right? It is, for example, it's a home. And then we are going to say it also has another property called element, another prop called element, and it takes JSX, right? For example, I write a JSX. I can say hello world, right? And we are going to end it, right? So what happened here? I'm going to quickly create a prettier file because my VS Code setup is it is going to auto format only if I have this file. So I'm going to save it, formatted it based on how I want it. But what happened? Now we have hello world, right? It's a JSX, but it's not rendering anything. But here, if I say hi, I have hi, right? I'm going to increase that. Here I have hi, right? And it is above the browser router. Now I have this path called home and I have hello world. So now if I go to /home and enter, I have access to hi also, I have access to hello world also, right? See, so this, I can tell it, I don't have to give a slash, but it's basically like a URL endpoint, right? Whatever goes after slash or your endpoint, it's going to be a path, right? For example, we can create another path. Let's say I'm going to copy that and then I'm going to say about, and I'm going to say about a stage, right? Now, if I go into regular, it's going to say only say hi, right? This. Now, but if I go to /about, it's going to give us about us page. Now, this is the element, right? This is JSX. Now, what do I mean by JSX is we can pass a component here, right? We can pass a component because it's whenever we have a simple JSX, for example, let's have a component and let's say about page, about.js, and let's create a simple component. It is returning us about us page. It's the same thing, right? I directly it needs to be capital about. This is going to be about, and I'm going to import about. Import about. Instead of this, I can pass my component, and I am going to refresh it, and it's going to give us anything that's here, right? About us page, right? So what an element is, element takes JSX, right? It is a property that takes a JSX element. And what is a JSX? Any component is a JSX, right? Because we write JavaScript and HTML inside of a JSX. It's returning a JSX, right? Yeah, a component has JSX if it is returning JavaScript and HTML. So now if we go into home, we still have home. Now, but if we go into just our main URL without any path, it's going to say hi. But we need to be able to also provide a path, right? So we can say something like route path is going to be empty, just slash, right? Because localhost 3000, or like even if you go to facebook.com or if you go to facebook.com/, it's going to be the same thing, right? It's the index, right? So slash and then element. What element do we want to show? Here basically you would show your home page, right? Home page, because it's the initial page, right? So here I'm going to say hi home page, and then I'm going to close that routes, right? I'm going to remove this from here. So this is what your file, main file, especially we implement browser router in index because it's going to get larger, right? Whenever we are routing, and your main file is always going to be only routing things, right? If you look into larger project, larger code base, larger website, your app file is only going to be like routing. You are going to have provider, context API, theming, but like everything else you write in your own component, right? So right now what's happening? So this is the index file. Even if I refresh, the index file is giving me homepage. The about, if I go to /about, it's giving me about us page. And then if you go to home, it's going to give hello world, right? So what's happening? So we can have, whenever you write a website, whenever you code a website in HTML and CSS, you need to have 3 different files, 3 different HTML, and then you have to write all of this and then link them to one another using a tag, right? Now what's happening in React? It's just one application. For example, here, let's see on an element, on an iPhone. 1 second. Okay, let's see here what's happening. I'm going to open the body. I'm going to open root. It's just one, right? Hello world, nothing else. If I go to localhost 3000, inside of a root, it's home page, right? So I still have that root. So it is one page. We are not routing it to somewhere else, right? It is one page, right? So now we'll create a component. We'll create our nav bar, and that is going to be like, if we click on that nav bar, if we click on home, we are going to be routed to home page. And then we are going to see like, hey, like this is not refreshing our page. And then we'll see like how we are able to like route from one path to another path, and how these kind of routing are basically set in React, right? So other thing is, whenever we have a path, we can also say, hey, this is my index page, or this is my main page. It's going to be the same, right? So this is more cleaner, right? Hey, this is my index page. Hey, if I have a path of home, that means if I have a path of home, show me this JSX, right? If I go to show me this JSX, right? Now what we can do is we can have a component that can say like homepage.js, right? We can have our code for our main page, and then we can have another component, let's say contacts, right? Contact.js. I'm going to create a simple component, RAFCE. You guys might know this shortcut. Homepage. Function always needs to be capital. If a function has to be capital. You get it. The naming can be small, doesn't matter. But whenever you write a function, it has to be capital. Contact. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it as contact, and then I'm going to route it to our contact page. Contact page. Now, what happened was, if I go to contact, I'm going to see contact page, right? And I can say, so we have home page, right? Our index page can be a home page, and also we can have a path of home to have a home page. Why we are doing this is, for example, if we have a navigation bar, we need a path, right? If you go to let's say airbnb.com or airbnb.com/home, it's going to be the same thing, right? /home, it's going to be the same thing. Oh, not in terms of Airbnb, but in terms of Facebook or most website, it's going to be the same thing, right? So we want to make sure like we have our home component set to home page. So 2 components are being handled by one single component. That's fine as well. So okay, so now we have this. Sometimes what happens is, whenever you are creating, let's say this is a component, right? This is not a page, right? What we can do is we can have, you can on your component, if you want to be more explicit, you can always rename it to like .page.js, right? It is going to say, hey, this is from a page, so about.page. And you can also rename this to .page.js, similar to like how you guys did with CSS, right? .module.css. .page. Okay, I have this. What's the problem? Okay, the input needs to be homepage.page, right? So this is just the name, but it helps us to identify, hey, this is related to this page, right? This is not a general component. This is related to this page. Okay. Now, one thing we can see, one example we can see, like, for example, if we go into anything, let's say localhost 3000, slash React, right? Now what's happening? We went to an endpoint, we went to a path, but we have not specified that path, right? So if we look into Airbnb, let's say slash React, what do we get? We get an 404 error. This is same as Airbnb slash home, in Airbnb slash Statio, same thing, right? So they are having this one single component basically render. If the path does not exist, they are rendering one single component, right? They're rendering one component if the path does not exist. So one good thing about React Router DOM is it gives us one feature called route path equals to asterisk or the multiply symbol. And then what it does is we provide it as an element of, let's say, 404, not 10, right? So what it does is it basically looks for the other path whenever you go into any path that is, let's say, slash Statio, right? Or slash right? What is it rendering? It is looking for our path and it's saying, hey, like this path does not exist. That means I have to render this element because it does not exist. So that's one useful feature of React Router DOM. Now this can be anything, right? We can create our own 404.page.js. And this has to be capital 404 page. It cannot be a number. So error page, right? We can say 404 not found, right? So if we go here, we can get that component called error page, and we can render that component, right? So if we refresh it, the endpoint does not exist. It is going to give us that component. Do you guys like understand until here, like what we were doing, how this works, why we are using browser router, why we're using routes, and why we're using route? If you guys have any confusion until now, I think it's the good time to ask.
Yeah, Nitish, I have a question. So what are really your endpoints to a URL? Like you were addressing it as a path. Like React here is a path. Like isn't React an endpoint as well? Like, what's the difference?
Yes, endpoint or a path. Endpoint is like certain endpoint or a path. It's basically whenever if I publish this website, I'm going to have some URL, right? And that URL is going to have a path or an endpoint. It's the same thing, path or endpoint. We use endpoint word whenever we are referring to an API, right? But API is basically a URL that has a path, right? So if we see like JSON placeholder, the one that we did last time, if we go into like to-dos, it has this path, right? But we call it an endpoint. It's the same thing, either a path or an endpoint. But whenever we are referring to API, we like to use endpoint. But it is the same thing. Did you like get the answer right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. So you guys understand until here now, right? We are using an external library called React Router DOM. We installed it, and then we get these components from React Router DOM that helps us create a navigation flow, right? Now here we can basically create our own heading component, and then we can implement routing, right? So that is what we are going to do next. But like I just want to make sure like you guys understand until now, like how we are implementing, how we are using an external library in React in order to achieve routing.
Nitish, so
Yes.
you only added stuff on app.js, like nowhere else, like for the browser router and stuff.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make it simple, right? I don't know. I could currently, if I go to index is wrapping app, I can basically come here, say I want to route browser router here. That is my entire app is going to have access to window object, right? Entire app is going to have window object. Now I don't need this because my app is going to have that window object, right?
Yeah.
So whenever you see theme provider context, it's always mostly it's going to be on index, because this is going to give access, because it's your entry point to your application, right? Whenever you enter that application, you need to have that access. So if you have any context, you use providers, context provider here usually, but we are like currently looking into just app. I just wanted to introduce everything together. Like it is giving access us to window. This is giving access us to location. Now we can modify and we can like put router there, because everything is, our application is wrapped inside of a router. Now routes and route and everything else needs to be inside of a browser router. That means like that is inside of our router, because it is, let's look into like our component tree. That will make it more clear, right? Now, if I am in home page, I go in component. Now you see, right? Initially, I have browser routers, and then I have router, and then router is giving me access to navigation provider, and router is giving me access to location, right? Window.location. And then I have app, which is my component, right? And then inside of an app, I have routes. Browser is giving access to router, which is window, right? Window. And then window has an object called navigation. And then it also gives us access to window.location, right? The props is location. And then inside of our app component, we have routes. And then route is basically giving us, right? It matches, it is giving us path, right? We have this slash path because it is home page. Now, if we go to about, route is going to give us access to all of our endpoint, right? Like the first one is, we have how many routes do we have? It's going to give us access to those routes. Now, if we go into this particular div, it is going to give us the children, right? So this is like really handy, right? The React developer tools is really handy. It is rendered by about component, and about component currently doesn't have any props or state. It is only rendering about us page, but the children is about us, right? This is what we are rendering, but it doesn't have any props. We are not passing props. We are not passing state. So we don't see that here. But in general, your whole app tree starts with browser router. It starts with browser router because we are wrapping our entire app by browser router. So we have access to window object, and then we come into app. Now we have access to window.location. Now we have access to window.location.href, right? All right, any other questions, or if that was not clear, let me know. Okay, then let's look into like, let's implement a basic navigation, right? Let's create a navigation bar. It is going to be pretty simple. We are inside of a div. I'm basically going to do everything in app, and then I'm going to move things around, right? Basically, you wouldn't write everything in one single component, but we are going to do that anyway. So let's create a nav, right? I'm going to use HTML element. So navigation, it's going to have an ordered list. And that is going, this doesn't use a snippet. Okay, unordered list. And then unordered list is going to have a list, right? Let's say this list is home, right? This is a home, right? We have home, right? And then I'm going to have a couple of other navigation options. Let's say this is going to be contact, and this is going to be about, right? So now, if we see here, we have these things. Now what I want to do is like, I want to basically remove these styles. So I'm going to create a simple app.css file. Our next topic is going to be CSS in JS. So we're not going to be using plain CSS, but right now we'll be using plain CSS. So we'll modify that along the way. Import class app.css. Here, I'm going to target the navigation. It's plain CSS, right? I'm just targeting. I'm going to turn off this. I'm just targeting HTML element, right? Display. I want them to be flex. I want them to be in the center, right? And then let's say I want a background color of light blue, right? Okay. Now I need to remove the styles of the list. Inside of a nav, I'm targeting unordered list. The style is going to be none, right? I don't want those bullet points, right? The style is going to be none. So now the list is currently displaying like this. Now we want to change that. I'm going to target list inside of unordered list. And this is going to be, we are going to use inline display. That means it is going to display line by line. Currently, I think I have too much zoomed in, right? I'm going to, that's appropriate, right? That's, you can see it, right, properly. Right? And I'm going to give it a margin left of, let's say, 20 pixels, right? So we have a navigation bar, right? We have a navigation bar. We have home, contact, about. Now we're going to just associate that with our path, right? We're going to, whenever we click home, we want to go to home page. Whenever we click contact, we want to go to contact page, and so on, right? Let's go back to our app. So now let's see. Let's see. So we have another component that React Router provides called link, right? We talked about link, right? It is same as anchor tag. For example, if you want to go to home, what would you do here? You would do anchor tag href, and then you say /home, right? And then this anchor tag can come here, right? So now if we have home, for example, if we go into, if we are in contact, now if we click home, we go into home page, right? That is anchor tag. But I'll do this and I'll show you what's the problem with anchor tag, right? Contact. Now I have contact and I have home. Now if you look into this element, let's look into this element. I'm going to do this. Okay. I have a div of root. I have this div. I have navigation bar and I have home page. Just look at this div, right? Root, our main index file. If I click contact, it's re-rendering everything, right? It's refreshing the page. It's killing our lifecycle and it's starting the lifecycle again, right? We don't want that. React is a component base. We just want to display contact component, right? When I click home, it's re-rendering it again, right? So we use link. Link is same as anchor tag, but we'll see how we use it. We're not going to be using this anchor tag anymore. Okay. Now let's look into link, right? So link is going to be the same as anchor tag. We are going to link. We are going to link it. And then it takes a props, right? It takes a prop. Anchor tag takes href. It takes to. Where do I want to link it to, right? Home means slash, right? Home means slash. That means the index page. Now I am going to do the same thing, and I'm going to link it to /contact, right? Okay, and then I'm going to link it to about. Okay, so now if we see, if we click contact, it's changing, right? But is it refreshing our React application? No, right? It's only changing these, right? It's only changing. If you see root component, it's not changing root component. If you look into this div, I click this contact, it's changing this div, right? It's changing this, right? Right. So link component is basically helping us route to go to different route, same as a tag, same as anchor tag, but without refreshing our browser, without re-rendering, without creating so many re-renders, right? But there is another caveat to this, right? Right now it's working as expected. But if we, instead of browser routes here, if we had link component, let's say we have browser router here,
Excuse me, Nitish.
Yes.
How come you don't have to write home for that number 15? Like I think
Nice
I missed
question.
that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, nice question. Because you say index means this is my homepage, right? So if I don't put these two route home and slash or index is rendering the same homepage, right? So that means if I go to slash, it's going to display the homepage, and if I go to slash home, it has to display the same thing. We can do just index for now, or if we want to do home, then it is going to render the same component again because it's homepage, right? Because it has a path of home, right? So this is only the difference between an index page and it can be a slash home or just slash, or if you want to give path equals to slash, and then you can match that slash here, it is going to render this, right? But the proper way is, hey, this is the index page, so that slash is going to be that. So we are not going to give a home page. I'm going to remove another component. That's just a duplicate. It does the same thing.
If you don't use the index element like as a slash, like, or you just write as you wrote before, like path equals slash, like instead of slash, you write home, right? Or like just in the quotations you have home. Like, will that work as well, or will it not work?
So if you tell it it's path equals to slash, that means, hey, it's my index page. It's going to know, right? And then here link to slash means it is going to link here. But if we write it index, it also knows, hey, this path is called slash. This is my home page. Now to slash means it knows that it's an index page.
No, I mean like in a path, if you write path equals like in quotations home, will that work as well?
Now it doesn't.
And
because
you
our
put in
index
like
page
home in that link
here.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
now it works home, right? But if you go
Yeah.
to like just your index path, which is this, like just your URLs, let's say www.anything.com, right? That is the index, right? But in order to go there, you need to again reroute that to slash home, and then only it's going to display that home page. But if you give it as an index, it's going to automatically identify, hey, this is my index page. This is my main page. This is the one page that I need to show if I don't have any path, right? For example, you go to Airbnb, it doesn't have any path. That is called an index page, right? It doesn't have any path. It's an index page. So if you go here, it has a tab. If you go here, it is an index page, right?
So this is very crucial. Like every time you make an app, like you need to use the index element first.
Yes, that is very crucial. We are going to see another example. We are going to do nested routing. That means, hey, what if inside of a home page, I also need to go somewhere like let's say slash books /1, right? I need to get the first books, right? We have or slash author, right? I need to get the first book and I need to get the author, right? So how do we do that? We'll look into that. Like when we do this, we need now books becomes an index page for this one, right? Now books becomes an index page for one. So we'll see that. We'll come into that. We'll come into nested routing. That is called nested routing. We are going to nest routing. So we'll come into that. But for now, it's the home page. Home page is going to be always be an index page. You can give it as slash home, or it doesn't matter if you don't give it as a home, but the default path is going to be slash. So if I hear slash, it's going to be the default path. But now if you noticed, I don't have anything being rendered, right? I don't have anything being rendered. If I go into dev root, I don't have anything. This is because these navigation tag needs to be inside of a browser route, because browser route is giving us access to that window element, right? Again, window element dot location dot href. Now this is going to route us to that href. That means it needs to be inside of a browser route. So that's why whenever we have this browser route on our main page, that means everything has access to window. So when everything has access to window, we can remove this from here. And now we have that display being displayed. Right.
Cool. Thanks.
Now we'll look into, as you said, I'm going to remove some style here. I'm going to target the list. Now list is an anchor tag. Whenever we used link, that means it's an anchor tag, right? It's an anchor tag. We are connecting it, right? It's an anchor tag. It's a public API for rendering a history over. It's a link prop. It's a link. It's an anchor tag in HTML. So I'm going to target that, and I'm going to remove some declaration. I'm going to write text declaration none. That is going to remove underline, and then I'm going to say color of white. This is going to give our color of black. Okay. So then that's that. And then now we are going to see the nested routing. One question that you asked before. So let's go ahead and add something, another route, and let's call this route that as a path of books, right? And let's say we have an element to display this, and let's display books, right? So now what happened is we don't have that link here, but if we go to books route, we have books, right? We have access to this. Now you see we have access to this, but this is not changing. This is fixed, right? The navigation is fixed, right? So navigation will, whenever you have navigation tag, it's always going to be like, it can be inside your header, and then whenever you see a website, it always have a navigation bar that is going to be fixed, right? And then you have a footer which is going to be fixed, and everything in between is a component. Everything is between is a component, and then you are changing that component. You are just changing based on the route. You are changing that component. So that is, and this is where you can have other links, other components, and then let's say homepage can have some other hidden links, maybe your blog post, maybe other route where you can render those components. So here, let's see. Now, let's see. Let's add a footer, right? We already have a header, which is a navigation. Let's add a footer, and then we'll see. We'll go on from there. Now I'm going to just give it as a div. I'm going to say copy, and I'm going to write some JavaScript here, right? New date of. I'm going to get full year, and then this is going to get me the year, right? So if I look at this, it's a footer, right? So if I go to home, it's not changing. If I go to contact, it's not changing. Only the route is changing, right? Only the component is being rendered, right? I go to about, only this is being rendered. If I go to /books, only this is going to be rendered, right? So what is route doing? It is not changing anything that's above it. It is displaying everything that is above it, and it is displaying everything that is below it. It's only changing these component. It's only rendering this component, right? So what we can say is like, whenever we see a website, it can have a header. The header can have a navigation, and then we can have routes that is going to render anything that is inside or between the body component. And then we can have a footer, right? And the footer is not going to change, even the route is changing, right? Okay, so now let's look into kind of advanced routing. You guys have any problem with this, understanding this? Did you guys get it? What I did here, right? You guys understand this, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. This is just JavaScript, and in JSX we write JavaScript inside of a curly braces, right? In JSX, so I just got a new data object, and then I got the error current year, which is 2022. So okay, let's see. Now let's see. We can have, whenever we are on books route, let's say we want to go into book can have an ID, right? Or book can have another route called, hey, buy a book, right? But right now it's 404, right? We can have another route called sell a book, right? Now how can we implement that, right? We don't want to say, hey, if we can say like this, right? But I also two different way. we can say, hey, book/buy, and then I can say buy a book, right? Now, if I go to book/buy, it's going to say buy a book. It is rendering that component, right? But it is inside of books, and then it is going one path above books, right? Which is buy, right? Now we are going inside, we are nesting it, we are going inside of our paths, right? Same way we can say another route, we can say sell, and then we can say sellable, right? Now, if I go into sell, I have sell a book, right? So this works this way also, but we want to do it in a better way, right? We want to do it in a better way. I'm going to get this. I'm going to do it here so it's separate from this. These are basically components that we created. Here I'm just rendering JSX, so I'm just going to keep it separate. So now if you see for this book endpoint, book is a parent, right? For buy and sell, book is a parent, right? If you want to buy a book, you have to go through parent, right? Right?
Yes.
Okay. So what we can do here is we can basically instead of closing that, we can wrap these children for a book inside of a parent, right? We can wrap these children inside of a parent. Now, when we do so, we don't need to specify books, right? We can say buy, we can say sell. Now, if we go into book/buy, you see we are rendering books, but we are not rendering buy a book, right? But we are still getting access to that buy endpoint, buy path, right? We are not getting 404. We are getting books, but we are not getting this. So what happened? Now this is a path. This path is by default rendering. As soon as I go into this path, it doesn't matter if I go into any other path. As soon as I hit this path, I'm going to render this, and then I'm going to return this. That is what it's doing, right? So instead, what we want to do is we want to just have a path, and then we want to give a route of index for a book. This is going to be my index page. And then I'm going to give it the element. See what I did here is the same thing, right? Same thing like this. For these components, this is the index page. For this component, this is the index page, right? For these components, this is the index page. But for buy and sell, or for books endpoint, for books is going to be the index page. This is going to be the index. Right now, the reason why we don't have anything here or anything wrapped inside is because whenever we have a website, we don't have anything, right? For example, Airbnb is going to be Airbnb, right? It doesn't have anything. Let's say if we need to have Airbnb/home, then we could wrap everything inside of a home, and then we could make these a child of a home, right? In this case, we went to books. Now, if you go to book, this is going to be the index page for all the children element of our route. This is quite advanced concept of routing. This is called nested routing. So we are nesting that route inside of a book, right? We are buy and sell. So for book, if I go into book, my default or index page is going to be this. It's going to return books. Now I don't need to tell here path equals to books, right? I don't need to, because this is going to be my default page for books. So if I go to books, I'm rendering books. Now if I go to /buy, I'm rendering buy a book, right? Buy a book. Only this. I'm going inside. This is kind of one rule of routing. That is, like, if you have nested routing, you need to have a parent and a child. Same thing as React, right? React has components. React has parent component, React has child component. Right now, this app is a parent component, and this home, contact, error, these are child components. So we are writing it inside of our parent component. Same thing here. This is our parent path. We are giving buy and sell as our children path. So now we can access buy and sell through books. slash buy or books slash sell, right? So that is pretty advanced topic, but that is basically how you have how we have something called a nested routing. So this is I'll keep a comment here. This is called nested routing, right? If you want to go deep inside, right? Sometimes you have, let's take an example from this, right? What can be an example? If I click here, see I have Airbnb.com, but then I have rooms, right? Let's say I have rooms, right? And this room has a different ID, right? Different ID. Now, if I click on another listing, this is going to be a different ID, right? It can be 1,000, right? It can be anything. Now, this is going to have a different number, right? So that's how nested routing is implemented. But we'll see again how to make it dynamic. Now, instead of by, maybe let's say I want to have a book ID, right? Now, again, inside, if we want to go again more deeper inside of a cell, maybe we want to have, hey, sell this book that is related to a fiction, right? Maybe let's go into that. Right now, it doesn't exist. Now, in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to make this is a parent, right? We need to make it as a parent. Same concept as React components, right? Now it's a parent. Now I can say route index, so that element of a parent element, which is a seller book, and then I'm going to create another route that is a path of fiction. Now this is a child element, element. And then I'm going to render JSX. I'll say sell a fiction book, right? And then I need to close this. Now let's see what happened. Now, if we go into, now this is nested, right? Inside of a book, this element is going to be our default, which is like our index. That means slash book is going to display the index page, which is books. Buy is going to say buy a book. Now sell, for sell, it's going to show this sell a book because it's an index. Now we can go inside of a cell to a fiction, right? So now here we can go into books, we can go into sell, and we can go into fiction, right? If we enter sell a fiction book, right? So that is how we implement nested routing. Now, where do you use it? Everywhere. Like, for example, right here, right? It has a nested routing. This ID can change. Now we'll look into an example where we can have different ID, right? We implement it based on ID. So this is nested routing. Now, when we implement based on ID, then that will be called something called dynamic routing, right? Dynamic routing. This means your path can change, right? Your path can change. You are right now we're manually changing it. We are creating a path. Now this means this path can change. Instead of fiction, it can be any other genre of the book, right? It can change. So we'll see how we'll implement that. But for now, like, do you guys have any problem until now? Do you guys understand? Do you guys want me to repeat anything? Just let me know. No questions? You guys are getting it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's look into dynamic routing, right? So for now, I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete cell. I don't need this. I already told you about routing. And then I'm going to also delete this, right? So now if I go into slash books, I still have that as an index, right? I don't have any children, but I still have a parent, so it works. Now, when we look into dynamic routing, I want to implement something like, let's say, I want to have a slash book slash 1. This 1 can change to 2, 3, 4, 1,000, 5,000. We can have any number of books, right? Any number of books. So we are going to implement that. right? So how do we implement that using React Router DOM? Pretty simple. We are going to have a route. We are going to have a path. The path is going to have a semicolon. That means it is going to be changing, and we'll give it as ID, right? It can be anything. It can be an author. You can change the author name. Right now I'm giving ID because I want to have a number. Now on element, I want to display, let's say, a component. Let's create a component, right? Let's say book details.js. Okay, I'm going to say book details.js, and then let's say I'm going to say book details, imported it, and then I need to close this route, right? Okay, book details. So let's see what's happening. Now we have a path of ID that is going to render book details. That means this page, this component. So if we go into book, we give it an ID of 1. We have book details, right? Or we can say, hey, this is a book detail page, right? Right now we have access to it. Not just 1, it can be 1000, right? Still going to be is still going to render the same page. It can be 673 or 74, right? It will still be the same thing, right? Now, how do we render different component based on different ID, right? So that's another thing. Right now, this is dynamic routing. We are routing it based on the value changing, right, on the path. Nothing complex, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Users give a semicolon. That means this is going to be changing. This ID is going to be changing. Now you can have something like, okay, I have this book of ID 1, but I want it to have some author, right? So this can also change, right? Now, again, you can say, hey, I want it to have it to be of some genre. This can be a fiction, anything. This can change, right? So pretty simple to understand. But we'll see, like, we have something to take this, to grab this ID and change, like, display based on that ID. We'll look into like how we are going to do that. Before that, yeah, we'll look into going to do that. So we already talked about components, right? So these are React components. We are wrapping them by these components. So these components are giving us access to window.location, window.history, window.href. You got that part, right? You guys are good with that part. You guys got that part. Now we have hooks as well. React Router DOM provides us with 2 hooks, right? Nothing more, nothing less. Like, we don't have to remember everything. It only provides us with 2 hooks called use params and use navigate. Now we look into what this does. This is pretty simple. Even by name, you can see use params is user parameter, right? User parameter, and use navigate is from its name. Use this to navigate, right? Use this to go somewhere, right? Like an anchor tag. But we don't want to use link on our component, right? If we are on our component, for example, if we are on our about page, if we have a button, let's say we have a here, let's say we have a button, and then let's say home, right? Go back to home, or let's say go to home. And if we look here, and then if we go into our about page, we have a go to home button, right? So how would we do that in HTML? We would say, we would wrap this by a tag. We'd say href equals to /home. And then we would wrap this button inside of an a tag, right? Now, if we click it, we are going back to home, right? But right now, home does not exist. It's an index page. If we click this, we go back to home page, right? But it's not ideal, right? Because it's refreshing our app. We don't want it to refresh our app, right? We just want to change the component. We just want to go and come back. So that is when we are going to be using these hooks, right? One is use params and one is use navigate. Use navigate is used to navigate. That means I just showed you using anchor tag. So that function is going to be done by use navigate without rendering our page, without refreshing our page, like how link component linked it, right? it didn't render our page, right? It didn't re-render our page. Right now, if I click contact, nothing's changing, nothing refreshing, only the component, only this div is changing, right? If I go to contact, only this and this is changing, right? Navigation still the same, this and this, especially this, right? Go to home page, contact, right? So we want to achieve that. So we have these two functions. We'll look into one function now, and then we'll look into the other one later. So what is an ID, right? ID is a parameter, right? It's a parameter. So since it is a parameter, we have this function called useParam that is a hook. A function is a hook. A hook is a function. It's the same thing. We are going to say we are going to use that parameter, right? It's called useParams. UseParams, right? It's a function, right? From React Outer DOM. Just like how we consume any hook, we are going to put it inside, let's say, let params. It can be a params. We can put it inside a variable. Or if we use that params, it's also fine. We'll say if we come here, hey, this is a book page. Instead of that, we can say book page. I'm going to break a line, and I'm going to say book ID is, now this params gives us access to this, right? I can say params.id, right? So this is params is nothing more than props, right? It is a prop, right? We are getting this. Or if you already know what you are passing here, ID, we can also destructure, right? Like whenever we did with our custom hook, right? Whenever we are writing our custom hook, we can get an ID, right? From there, and then we can say the display that ID, right? So now what happens on the book detail page, when you go into book/ID, if we go to books page, we have books, right? Now, if you go into ID, book ID of 1, right? I'm printing that ID, right? I'm printing that ID. Whatever ID I provide here, I'm printing that ID. See, now I have access to that ID. I can say book title of 100. It's going to render, it's going to change that component, right? Based on that ID. So just straight functionality, just pretty simple functionality. For example, let's say we have class author. Now we can also get author, right, from here, and then we can use it, right? Right now it's going to say 100. Now let's say author and write author, right? Now let's give it as an author of Henry, right? Right now, oh, okay. Oh, okay, we got access to author, but we don't have yet access to author, right? So what we can do is we should have access to author, AUTHO. I haven't saved it. Books 100/ Henry is an author, right? Now I have access to book ID. I have access to author, right? So by this way, like I can really customize routing on my project or on my web application, right? I can send a user to any number of routes, right? Any number of route. For example, one of the places where I implemented this was, I'll show you a quick example. I think it's in Varshal. I think this one, right? So I was creating this website. Pretty simple, just a couple of routes. I have something, a portfolio. Now this portfolio, if you see /portfolio, if I click it, portfolio / it's a route, right? The path is changing. Now if I go back, I click it, I still have the same portfolio route, but my only path is changing, right? Only that path is changing, right? So you can see like the real life example of like where we can implement this routing dynamically, right? What is the importance of doing this, right? You can have your own portfolio. You can have so many posts that you do, but each post can be assigned to an ID, right? So that means you can always go into your own website. Let's say like yourwebsite.com. you have this website, you can have an endpoint path called blog, and now you can assign it to an ID, right? That ID can be anything, right? It can be a number, it can be like blog, and then you can have a blog post name, right? Post name right here, and then each of your blog posts can change, but it will be rendered on one single path called blog, right? You see, that's the main purpose of dynamic routing. So that is why we use dynamic routing. Do you guys have any questions on this? This is a really advanced topic in terms of navigation, in terms of routing, and then this is something that you'll see on every web page, every web page. Any questions, concern, anything that you didn't understand in dynamic routing? Pretty simple. It's basically just we are only using, see, we are still only using these 4 components: browser router, routes, route, and link. And now after so long, we just got this function or a hook called use param that is going to give us access to any ID or anything, so we can change things dynamically. But in order to change things dynamically, our path needs to have this semicolon. If I don't give that semicolon, it has to be /ID, right? It cannot be /1, right? So if you guys have any questions, we'll look into use navigate hook, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll talk like if you guys have any questions or anything. But like, do you guys understand so far? Anyone? You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, so we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
You can go ahead and finish that, or maybe well, basically, I had a question. What makes it dynamic? Like, it's because of the hooks you added.
What makes it dynamic?
Yeah, right here
Yes.
you added the hook.
Yes, I added a hook. Now, hook is nothing more than a function, right? It is a function.
Yeah,
It is a function, right? It returns an object of key value pair. So we are destructuring that, right? It's a key value pair. We are destructuring that, just like when we wrote our custom hook. If it was an array, we would do something like this, right? But it is not an array, it's an object, because you see it's an object. So we are destructuring from use param. So use param has access to the route path, and it is going to look for, does any of the path have semicolon, right? Because after semicolon, anything that you give is going to be a parameter that can change.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Thank
you. So now let's look into class 10. We have this book. I'm going to do this, and now let's look into about page, right? How do we go back without refreshing, right? So we have access to another hook or a function called use navigate, right? Use navigate, it's a function. So we'll store it similar to before. We can say use navigate equals to use navigate. So now what it does is it gives us access, because it's a function. Now we can use that function, and it gives us access to windows.history, or it gives us access to this back button or any function that we can pass here. Before we are using a tag. Now what we are going to do is we are going to give an onClick function, because it's a function, right? A hook is a function, right? It's a function. It's a navigate function, right? It's a function. So we can use that function on onClick, and then we are going to basically navigate that to, we are going to call that function because it's a function, and we are going to navigate it to home, right? Or let's say contact. Now go to contact, right? Let's say go to contact. Now if we save it, if I click contact, you see it took me to contact, but it didn't re-render everything. It didn't refresh my page. It basically gave me access to an anchor tag or a function that is going to, it basically gave me access to a function that helps me route, such as link tag, right? Link tag is taking me from this route to this route to this route. Same thing, but if I have any element, and then if I want to go back or perform any function, let's say if I have a buy button, I need to go into buy page, but like I cannot have that buy button on my navigation, right? I cannot have a link to a buy button, right? So I pass that as a function, and then if I click it, it's going to take me to that link without refreshing. Now again, the reason we don't want our web page to refresh is because it is going to run the React lifecycle again. That means it is impacting our performance, and it is annoying, right? For example, if you go to facebook.com, you click on messages, now it is going to refresh the whole page. Now it has to load everything from its header to its footer. It has to load everything. So we don't want to do that. If it is a big web page, it is going to take like so much time, right? If you go into facebook.com and then if you click on messages, it doesn't have to refresh. It only has to change the body to the message component, right? Because your Facebook top header and the footer still remains the same, right? So that is what use navigate allows us to do. It's a function that helps us to navigate, right? I can have another button. I can say on click function. It's basically a function. I can call that function, and then I can say send me to home, and then I can say go to home. Right now I go to about, I have go to home and go to contact. Now if I copy this again and I go to home page, I'll call that let navigate equals to, I'll use that again. I can use it anywhere, right? And then I'll have access to let's say this is home page. Now when I go to home page, it's going to tell me to go to contact. I can go to contact. I'm here. Let's go to contact page, and then let's put it here. Well, again, let navigate equals to use navigate. Remember how we use our custom hook everywhere where we needed. Now it's a custom hook, it's a function, right? So we are inside of contact. Now we want to send us to about, and we are going to go to about, right? So what happened here? We are on home page, we want to go to contact. We are on contact page, we want to go to about. We are on about, we can go to contact page, we can go to about, we can go to home page. See, like nothing is refreshed, and then we are navigating here and there so easily, right? So that is what use navigate helps us to do. It helps us to navigate. Now, other thing that we can do is, let's go to /react. This is our 404 page. In some pages, what you see is like, whenever you have an error, it's going to say, hey, you have an error. I'm going to reroute you to the home page in 5 seconds, right? And then it is going to reroute them to the home page. We'll do the same thing. Again, to reroute, we need a function called use navigate, right? It's a function, and then we'll store that as navigate, right? Here, I can say, let's say instead of 404 not found, and then I'm going to break. I'm going to say you are going to be routed to home page in 5 seconds, right? And then how I can reroute them is I can have a use effect. You guys know about use effect, right? I can have that use effect, and then I can call this function called set timeout. It's a JavaScript function. It's a web API. It is provided by the browser. And then I can say navigate to home page in 5 seconds, right? This is going to take it in milliseconds. 5,000 means 5 seconds, right? Use effect will have an empty dependency array. Now, if I go to an error page, let's say React, I have error page. Now you're going to redirect in 5 seconds. In 5 seconds, I'm going to go back to home page, right? See, it automatically took me back to home page. So now we can use this function anywhere. We can use it inside of our JSX. We can use it on another function. We can use it inside a hook. We can basically use it anywhere to navigate, right? So that is use navigate. Do you guys have any questions, concerns, anything on how I did it, on like any confusion, feel free to ask. But basically, this is everything that you need to know about navigation. Now, like you are able to go create your own website, create your own navigation, and display different components based on that navigation, right? So. Any questions, concerns? If you didn't understand any topic, anything? No? I'm going to push this to GitHub so that you guys can have access
like we can,
to this.
like we can also use the link component.
No,
right?
We don't want to use that. You know why?
Why?
That's not a best practice, because again, you see it. Link requires route. Route needs routes. Routes needs browser route. Now, if you are trying to go and use link here, now you need to import route. And then you need to import routes, right? Like this, right? So it's not a good practice. You can do it. It's not like you can do it. You can do it, but it's not a good practice. Instead, that's why we have these functions, right? Use param or use navigate functions to go back or route anywhere we want, right?
Okay.
Yeah, router demo, and then I'm going to create this. I'm going to take this.
And for the link component, if we want to add some active state, how to do that?
Sorry, what was that for the link component? Like what kind of active state?
Like if you click on about page, it will render the component of about, right?
Right.
But
yes.
But the user also wants to know that we are on about page, like appearance, like I want to make a green color to the about navigation. So how can
that is CSS, right? That is CSS, right? For example, right now you have text decoration of none, right? If we save it, if I click it, contact color, I'm giving it color. If I go here, right, we can put anything, right? We can wrap this inside of another div, and then we can change the color of that based on which component we are showing, right? For example, I use this extension called pesticide that helps me see everything like this div element or this. So I can basically have a div that is going to wrap this. I'll show you. Let's see about on our navigation. Let's see navigation, right? You have our list component, have.css. Let's say list of an anchor flag. Let's say we have border 1 pixel solid red, right? Let's say we have red. Now, if you can have a condition, right? If we are on our about page, that means if this is being rendered, you can basically change the color, or one example is, I'll show you an example of what we can do. This is the website that I work with. So if I go here on marketplace, and then if I leave, it is wrapped inside of a div because I'm on this route, because the route changes, it is looking for this route. Now, if this route matches the component, then we are applying this CSS, right? It is saying background color of that component. So for example, it's more easier in style component, which will come back later, like we'll look into that. But here, what you can say is, what you can say, I can't access JavaScript in CSS, but with style component, I can access JavaScript with CSS. That means I can access anything with JavaScript, right? So I can access this route, and then I can change the color if we are displaying this component. We can basically do that. We can basically put a condition. We can have our own navigation component instead of, right now we are doing it very simply, right? We are just having nav. We can have our own navigation component, and then this navigation component can have a use effect, right? And then that use effect can look for a condition, right? For example, if window.location.href equals to, let's say, /about, or like dot includes, if it includes about, then let's see, then like apply some CSS, right? We can do something like this, right? So what it does is, if we have our own navigation component, it is going to look for this href. It is going to say, hey, we have about, okay, we are going to apply some styling to this about component. We can do something like that. There are multiple ways to do that. One way we do that is we look at the route, right? Hey, I'm rendering this. That means if I'm rendering this, change this to this, right? That is something we can do. Or we can also change, we have CSS. I think we do have something called active. No, not active. There's CSS property.
Can you use class name in that?
Yeah, we can use class name for CSS. That's fine. I'm writing
Oh.
style directly, or you can give class name and then use that in CSS. It's the
okay.
it's the same thing. It's like we'll look more into styling in after like 10-15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
That's ref active CSS, active selector. We have an active selector.
If we can
right?
use class name, then it's no problem. So,
We can, but like here we can achieve that from CSS, right? We have an selector, right? So there is a, let's say a has an active selector, then background color is blue or red. Let's say red, right? Just remove this. You see this about, oh, it's active whenever we click it, but it's not staying, right? So we can say, can we nest it inside? We can do that in CSS. I don't think we can do it here. We can do it in SCSS. No, we can do it here. Yeah, CSS is pretty, it kind of limits you. So we look into like style components. We look into Bootstrap later on. That gives you like more power. For example, hey, I want to, let's say if I'm displaying a component, I want to pass some props here, right? Instead of take decoration none, I should be able to pass some props, let's say text, and then I can give that text. Text can be a variable that can have a value of none, that can have an array, value of none, or anything, right? Text or like underline. And then we can use this directly here from our component whenever we use this. So that's making CSS dynamic. That's called CSS in JS. That is something we that is a topic that we are going to be talking about today. So that will give you like more general idea. CSS, we have active selector. What else do we have? CS declaration, active, background color. Okay, a link, unvisited, visited. Okay, a visit. We have another selector called visited. We can give that, right? A visited. I also look at documentation all the time, guys. So color green, right? Now if we refresh it, oh, it's already, we have already visited it. That's why it's changing, but it should be mouse over link, hover, selected link is active. Yeah, we basically have some more CSS. We can look into that. Like we can change it based on our CSS. We just need to look into documentation, some references. I'm using like this kind of CSS right here. I'm targeting anchor tag that is inside of a list element. So if you guys still have any problem with this, like if you don't understand what I'm doing here or here, then you might want to look into some documentation. Cool. All right, so I'm going to commit it. Yeah, router. Oh, not a Git repository. So I didn't initialize it. Wait a minute. Add, wait a minute. Add origin. Oh no. Origin didn't match any file type. Really? Oh, get remove add. Add origin. Set screen. Okay. I'll share this link in the group and then we can take a 10-minute break, but if you guys have any questions, confusion, anything, feel free to ask. If you don't understand anything, just feel free to ask that. I'll share this link. Okay, I shared it in the group. Like, do you guys understand like how routing works now? Like, basically, we cannot implement routing in React by itself because it doesn't have that capability. We can say instead of link to, we can say we can use window dot push, no, window dot location. We can have a function called push, and then we can push that to href, like something like this, right? We can have this inside of a use effect, and then we can push it to a route. We can do something like this. But this is the same thing as doing using navigate. But we don't want to explicitly call the window object every time. That's not a good practice. So we use these functions. And in order to implement routing, React Router DOM is the most popular one. So I would definitely recommend learning React Router DOM. It has like weekly downloads of 7 million. That means everyone is using it. Every week it's like more than 7 million downloads. So yeah. Do you guys have any questions, concerns? So package depending, if we see, we can see Docusaurus also uses React Router DOM. So this is from Facebook, right? So Docusaurus is it's like it's building website, right? Using what do you call it? It's basically, yeah, it's building using React, and it is React Router DOM. This is made by Facebook. If we see other thing, Strapi is a $1 billion company that also uses React Router DOM. It is open source Node.js headless CMS. You can control like a blog, you can like WordPress, right? This is a CMS like WordPress. So it also uses React Router DOM. Like this is React Router DOM is like really what do you call it? Used by everyone, like Remix Run. We have this called Remix. Remix is similar to React. It is based on React, right? It is like Next.js, where you can use React again to build website, right? There are so many. Everyone uses React Router, Router DOM. So if you guys have any questions, concerns, feel free. If you have heard of Polkadot, if you are familiar with the blockchain, Polkadot is Web3 decentralization platform, right? It is like really famous. It is linked to Ethereum. It also uses React Router DOM, right? So it is built in React, right? So yeah, React Router DOM is the way to go. Like if you are learning routing, React Router DOM is like definitely recommended. If you go tomorrow, if you go to work for a company, they will definitely use React Router DOM, right? Eventually, they will use React Router DOM. So even Cloudflare uses React Router DOM, right? You know what is Cloudflare, right? It's whenever you have a website, Cloudflare helps us with SSH, right? I also use Cloudflare in my website to get SSH or to use geolocation or anything. So cool. Let's take a 10-minute break. But if you guys have any questions, concerns, feel free to ask. Nitusha? I don't think she's there.
Yeah, you can. So
I'm going to, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a basic extension made using JavaScript, but I'll start. Or again, I created this. It took me like a weekend. Nothing fancy, but counter. I'll put a counter 10 minutes, right? Okay, let's take a break. But if you guys have any questions, if you want to chat, feel free. Anything doesn't have to be React Router related. So,
how many hours in a day you spend time coding?
coding.
Like
I start. I'm in CST, right? I'm in Chicago, so my first meeting is at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So I wake up at like 7:30, make some coffee, and then I sit at work 8 o'clock. And then I'm meeting throughout the day, like 3-4 meetings. But I end my day at 4 o'clock. If I work from 8, I end at 4. If I work at 9, I end at 5. So pretty standard.
So at least 6-7 hours a day you spend. 5 to 6.
I spend coding like 3 or 4 hours a day. Nothing much, because there is like meetings, plannings. You have like you might have heard of agile, right? Like what is agile, or like Scrum. Like we spend so many time on that. Like we spend time on meeting, we spend time in discussion, we spend time before we work on the tickets. We have this grooming sessions where we talk about this ticket. We talk, if it is too complex, we try to break it down into different tickets, right? So
you don't bring any work at home, like I will do at home. You just do everything
sometimes
at 4 or 5 and done, right? Or
sometimes I do. When I first started, I stayed like late at night just to complete a task, right? Because like initially I was learning, it took time for me to understand. But eventually now, sometimes I stay late because like sometimes there is like on Friday, if I push a change and that change is breaking the website, I have to fix it, right? So during that condition, I might stay late, but other than that, like standard, like just working time, other than that, like I don't stay at work. If I have to, they have to pay me overtime, so I don't.
Oh, yeah. So you're pretty comfortable at your position. It's almost a year, right?
It's my contract, my contract with NFL, NBA, and La Liga ends on 23 December, but I have another client that I'll be working for after NFL.
So you change company or client in.
So I actually work for Tribal Scale, right? I work for Tribal Scale.
Yeah.
It's a Canadian-based company, and their client is Dapper Labs. So Dapper Labs is where I work for NFL All Day, NBA Top Shot, UFC. I don't work on CryptoKitties. I work with La Liga. So I work with NFL Top Shot All Day. I don't work with the UFC. I work with La Liga. So like football, right? So this is like, these are the components that we create, that we but like now the contract with Tribal Scale with the Dapper Labs is ending, but I'm still associated with Travel Skill. Travel Skill has other clients, so I'll be working for other clients like Ford or Nissan or something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, in a short amount of of
Mhm.
time, like year is a very short time, but
Yeah.
you have pretty good, speed and thought process of
I
while
think
teaching. I don't
it
know how
took me it took me time, right, to understand until I was forced to write the code by myself.
Yeah.
Like I was looking into tutorial, I was looking into like other people doing coding, like,
Yeah.
and then that was not helping me like in some way, right? Unless I was forced to do something on my own, I was having a little bit problem. But like once I was forced to implement things, and then I started understanding.
Oh, okay.
That's when I started working on projects, right? For example, I have this. I'll show you some example. I do some crazy things during the weekend. So I have a dog. Her name is Maya. So I was looking into creating a website or like something like that. So you know about Linktree, right? Everybody uses Linktree in Instagram. The link, and then it's basically like this. They put their links here, and then they create a website like this, right? If you click the link, they put it on Instagram, and then they put it something like this. So I saw this as an opportunity to create my own docs page. So I have on mobile, it will look something like this. It's nothing fancy, pretty simple. When I click subscribe, it gives me this model. When I click subscribe, oh, I have this on. No, okay. Oh, I have this flash thing on. Okay, if I click subscribe, it gives me the model. Now I can write an email, and then I can click subscribe, and then the email is captured. Like basic, right? Very simple. The functionality is very simple, but like instead of paying to Linktree and using their product, I looked at their template, I looked at their design, and I implemented it myself. So if you do something like that, like I will definitely say like you learn a lot, right? I also try to I'm using React on this. Nothing fancy, just a component that displays an image, displays a price, has a button, right? And then we have this. If I add, it updates it, right? Use effect, use state, right? I'm just using hooks. I click this. I'm displaying this component, and then that is going to like I'm using context to pass this data. That means whenever I go anywhere, if I go here, the data is still here. I use context API. Now if I click checkout, it's going to take me to Stripe, right? So I was looking at how can I integrate Stripe to my app. So you see so many websites use Stripe. So when you go ahead and like try to buy something, you see this form, same form. Same form, but I was just looking into, okay, how can I pass this data from Stripe to my own app? How can I connect it? This is just a test mode. So like this is how I started like kind of learning things. Like when I said like it's a simple e-commerce website, I was just trying to learn Next.js, and I was trying to learn Stripe. I looked at Stripe documentation. I went into Stripe docs API. There's the API reference. And then I look into this api.stripe.com, and then I'm using JavaScript. That means Node, right? Node makes sense for me. And then, oh, okay, like I install it using like this on my React app. And then authentication, how would I authenticate? Oh, I need to have an API key. I need to request that API key. And then that's how I authenticated it. In order to connect it, like I just followed documentation, right? Instead of looking at a tutorial, I followed documentation, and that's how I was able to like kind of learn like few
Can I
things.
share one
Yeah.
pay one person's profile and
Yeah.
ask him some questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a minute. Okay. I'm just trying to get your thoughts on.
Mhm.
Okay. Can you see my?
Yes.
Okay, what do you see?
I see VS Code with
Oh, sorry.
app.js.
This is the wrong one. Okay. Okay.
Right now, I cannot see any screen.
Sorry, I accidentally hit exit.
Okay.
So well, I will do it later when you're off.
But yeah, that's fine. Like you can feel free to ask me. You can ping me. Like I'm always at my desk, right? From 8 o'clock to like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, I'm always at my desk. I have Teams always open. So if you send me a text, if you have any questions, like I'm like, unless I'm in a meeting, I'm available.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think I had last batch of from last batch of bootcamp. I had few people who connected with me. I think they are currently like working. One of them is working for MX. But yeah, but like if you practice, like you'll get it. Like it's not hard, right? Everything is, even I need to look at documentation when I'm like running this bootcamp. Whenever I'm running a topic, I need to look into documentation, right? Like I also get confused, right? Just like before, I had to look into CSS documentation. At work, I have to like Google all the time. So it's like it's front end development is nothing more, or software engineering is nothing more than just solving a problem. It doesn't matter how you solve it. You just figure out a way to solve that problem. So
Can a software engineer hit React and choose another language like
yes.
Python or C++?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, it all depends upon what you want to do, right? For example, right now we are, like you are in React Bootcamp, that means you want to do web development, right? So,
Yeah.
but now in web development, you can do with Python, right? You can use Flask and Python. You can do web development with Flask. You don't need to know JavaScript, right? With Flask,
Okay.
you can create a website with Flask. But if you look, everyone uses JavaScript, right? So it's like, why would you use Flask, right? Why would you be the only one to use Python to build a website, right? So
Yeah.
that's, it kind of depends upon like what you want to do, where you want to pursue like your career in. For example, if you want to do web development, JavaScript is definitely a way to go. But if you want to do game development, or if you want to build an app, maybe Java or C++. And then, yeah, and then if you want to do, let's say, infrastructure, maybe Kubernetes and Docker, that could be another. So yeah. Okay, cool. Right, so we covered React routing. So if you guys have any questions related to React routing, feel free to ask. Go ahead, create your own website, create your own portfolio website. Doesn't have to be fancy. Create some navigation, contact, about, create some components, right? Like create something and then style it and then just have it on the web, right? So you just practice with React. Whenever you are building your own portfolio, you feel encouraged to make it, like to put your work in. Like whenever you are writing something about yourself, you want to make it better. So that's how you can practice. Cool. So we have that. Now we will look into let's see. Okay, that's routing. Okay, now we'll explore some other libraries, and then this is just going to be, hey, how can we like use any other libraries? How can we style it? What is the best way to use CSS? Or like, is it currently like people are using style components whenever you are using React, because it gives you more control of what you want to do. So like you also, as a software engineer, as a React developer, you need to know what is out there, right? If you are learning React, you need to know that there is something called Gatsby, right? You need to know there is something called Gatsby, and you use Gatsby. It is based in React, but you use Gatsby whenever you are creating a blog site, right? But if you are creating a standard portfolio website, if you using Gatsby doesn't make sense, right? So for that, you might use React or Next.js, right? So React or Next.js, right? So just being familiar with it like really helps, because whenever you are React developer, you are not just working with React, right? You are working with different React libraries. So Gatsby is made on top of React. That means you'll write React code in Gatsby whenever you are writing Gatsby. Next.js is based in React. That means you'll write React code in Next.js. The only difference is in React, we learned about routing. In Next.js, we don't have to use routing. It's already implemented in Next.js, right? So that's the difference. Like some framework is better than other, some library is better than other, but the core concept, the core technology right here, even if Next.js is better, it doesn't work without React. You need React. And then in Next.js, whenever you are writing code, you are writing React code. You are creating a function, you are creating a hook, you are creating components, and then you are passing that components.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll explore 3 different libraries. It's not going to take us so much time. We'll look into icons, we'll look into Bootstrap. We'll see an example of how to write a Bootstrap code. You might be familiar with Bootstrap in general. I know some of you guys are familiar with this. If you write just HTML page, you can use Bootstrap to style it. You can use CSS, like CSS only. If you use this link in your HTML document, you'll have access to Bootstrap, or we can use Bootstrap in React, right? So we'll look into that. And then we'll also explore something called CSS in JS, which means how to use JavaScript in CSS. So that is going to be style component. Style component is the most famous CSS in JS library. Everybody uses style component. So and then it makes our CSS so easy that we can create a component out of our CSS. So for example, here we have a button component. We are writing plain CSS. We are not writing anything fancy, but we are writing it as a component. And now we are going to use this component everywhere in our code base. Every company uses style components. Airbnb, Spotify, every company uses style components. So we'll look into that. Those are like pretty standard in the professional environment. So it is really important for us to be familiar with these things. Okay. On the same code base, what I'm going to do is first we'll explore React icons, right? So what is a React icon? React icon is nothing but a library that provides you icons, right? For example, you have, let's say, so this is React icons. We have so many other icons, right? We have Font Awesome. Font Awesome can give us icons, like icons. It is nothing more than an icon. So if you go into any website, you see, hey, here's a warning, and then you see an icon. Or if you say, hey, check out, or hey, like sign in, or hey, log out, you see an icon, right? So for example, let's go to a website. Again, Airbnb, doesn't matter. This search is an icon, right? So now whenever we are creating our own project, we are not going to go ahead and design our own icon or do anything else. These are icons, right? These are navigation, but these are icons. So we'll see how we can use these icons in our React app using React icons. But also it is the same way we can use Font Awesome icon. We can use something called Alibaba icons, I think. No. I think there is something from Alibaba, but we have something from Airbnb, Airbnb, React, CSX style guide. We have style guide. these are open source, right? These are open source. This is by Airbnb. This is what Airbnb uses, right? This is React. Everything is React. But we'll look into React icon. We have Bootstrap icons. These are all icons, how we can use them on our components. We have font awesome icon. So basically we are using React icon because it has collection of other icons, right? We have collection of VS Code icons, right? Even on VS Code, we might have so many different icons. We have access to that. We have access to weather icons. So if we are creating a weather app, we can use these icons. So yeah, those things. So initially, every time whenever you implement a library or if you try to implement anything, always look into documentation because it's going to tell you what to do, right? How to install, how to use it. So we are going to install React icon. I'm not going to use save. I'm going to use npm install. You can do yarn, anything. So I'm going to npm install React icons. So I got the icon, right? I can look into my package.log file. Do I see React icons? I see React icons. That means I have now access to React icons, right? I have access to everything that React icons has to provide, right? I have access to all these icons. So let's see node modules. We just installed React icons. And let's find where is React icons and let's try to look into it. Like, let's see what it is, React icons, right? Now, inside this folder, you see so many different things, right? Let's look into VSC. What is it? VSC has an index.js, it's JavaScript. Now, this is an icon, right? It is an icon. It is saying it by itself. It's an icon, right? It's an icon tree. Now, this is generated by Webpack, but okay, index.js. Now, this basically gives us access to other icons. It is doing nothing more. It's a function. It's a SVG. It's a SVG. But these are icons. This is icon. This is icon. Now, if I try to use, let's say, VSC archive, which is an icon, let's see here, we go to VS Code icons, and let's see, do we have any archive? Yes. So that's the VSC archive. This is this icon. Right? So let's try to use this icon. Let's go to our homepage. For now, I'm going to not display this. I'm not going to display the footer. I'm going to create a div. And here I'm going to, not here, let's create another route. That would be easy, right? Let's create another component called icons, icon.page.js. And in app.js, let's create a route. That route is going to take us, that route is going to have a path of icons. Element it's going to show us is icons. Let's create that component first. Let's put const icons return return nothing, right? Return empty. So we are going to import that icons. And okay, now we are not going to see any of the routing part. We are just going to be focusing on this icon page, icon component, and then we'll see how we can import what you needed. Was the issue path icons, element is icons, dynamic routing. Oh, I need to close this route, right? I need to close this route. Okay. Now let's go to /icons. Okay, so right now we have nothing. Now we'll look into how we can use React icons, right? So it says pretty simple. You import because it's a function, right? It's a component, right? Everything in React is a component. You import it as a component, right? So now let's import it. Now we are in our documentation page. Let's go into anything, any icon we want to use. Let's say this account icon, right? This icon we want to use. So we have the icon name here. We are going to say import BSC account from React icons. Now, another thing to note is we need to specify from where we are getting it. So it's a VS Code icon, right? VSC, right? So if we get Bootstrap, we have to say React icons /BS. So everything is in the document, right? If you look into documentation, everything is in the documentation. For now, we are only taking this icon. So what we are going to be returning is we are going to be returning that icon. Because it's a component, we can directly display it as a component. Now, if we go, we have icon, right? We have that icon. Now, one good thing about using React icons or any other library in general is we have access to props because it's a component, right? Component can use props. Now let's see what kind of props we have access to. This is an icon type. We have access to size, color, title, and children. Children means we can put something inside of it as well, or like wrap it. It can be a parent also. So, but we have access to size, color, and title, right? We can see that from documentation, like I think here, Microsoft Code icons. Let's see. VS Code, Code icons. Let's see. Access to this, but it is basically using Microsoft /VS Code, and then it is using that icon here, right? So we have access to different props. To see that prop, we can click this. We can go on its type, and it will show us we have access to these props. Or we can just say right type control and enter, and it is going to give us all the props, right? Whatever we have access to. Now there are so many JavaScript functions, so many browser functions that we have access to also. For example, you have access to href, right? That means it's a link. If you click that icon, it is going to take you to somewhere else, right? So we can have access to that as well. But this icon in general has access to other properties such as color. Let's change the color. Color equals to, let's say we want blue. Save it, it's going to be blue, right? We have an icon, and then we are using the property. Let's say we want to change the size, right? We want to say 200 pixel. We save it, it's going to be bigger, right? So now what happened is you have that ability to modify that icon however you need. It can be 50 pixel. Let's say I want to give it a color of red. It can be a red. What else can I have? I can have a title. Let's say my account. Now what title does is whenever I hover over it, it will show me what is it. So that is what title does. Same thing, I can import some other icons such as, let's say, FA trash. Now, if you might think, hey, how do you know there is this icon called FA trash that exists? Well, I don't, but if you look into documentation, it does. If you are using it in your code base, if you have used it before, you'll know that this icon exists. So I'm going to do FA trash. And I have a trash icon, right? I also have access to color, size, and title. Now this is, we need to import it from FA/FA, and this is from /VSC. Because this icon exists, the VS Code icon that we imported, this icon exists on /VSC, right? And just now we imported FA icon, which is font awesome. And this icon exists on FA, right? So trash, where is trash? Let's see. The search trash. Yeah, this trash, right? FA trash, this one. So we also can say, hey, I want Chrome, right? You can say FA Chrome, right? If we see, We have access to Chrome icon, right? We can give it a color of tomato, right? There's going to be a tomato color, right? The other thing that you can do is this break a line. We can have a button, and that button, let's say it's a button, can include icon, right? So whenever you see, let's say add, we have access to this icon called FA plus. And it is a self-closing tag. I import FA plus. Now I have a button and I have an icon inside of that button, right? So what it's doing is it's giving you ability to like use it anywhere as a component. It's a component. You are using that icon as a component, right? So that is everything about icons. Either you use React icons or any other icon library, right? So if you go to npm JS, let's say icons, you have access to so many icons. You have access to React icons. You have access to React Native vector icons, country flag icons. You can use anything. Same way, right? It's the same way. See, in order to use this, we need to install it. Same way, npm yarn anything, and then we import it as a function. We import it as a component. Sorry. Now we have this called. It takes a country name which needs to be a string, and it is going to return either it is true or false. For example, if we say Nepal, then it is going to be true, right? Because it exists. So we can display that icon, right? How do we display that icon? It is inside of an image tag. The flag can be directly from the library GitHub pages or from GitHub pages mirror, which is a tiny bit faster. Or you can also use Unicode flag icons, which is like this. So like in general, you have access to, like you can use any icons that is available. You can use sanity icons. You can use MUI. We have something called Material UI. Material UI has we install the same way, and then it has components. It also has icons. Let me show you icons. Okay, it also have icons, access to icons, but we use it as a component. We import it as a component and we display it the same way, the same thing. Either tomorrow you go ahead and work for a company, they have their own icon. It is going to be the same way. It is going to be a component, and this is how you are going to use these icons from any library that you want. Do you guys have any questions on this? Any questions or concerns? Because like that's pretty much everything about icons, using icons as a component. And then whenever you are doing your feedback app, you can add an icon, right? It doesn't have to be just a regular button. You can add an icon to that button, right? You can make it fancy. Whenever you are creating your own portfolio, you can have different icons. You can use those. You can leverage those different icons, and everything is going to be a component again. Any questions, concerns? No? Pretty straightforward, right? Pretty easy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Now we are going to look into something called, do you guys want to look into Bootstrap? It is going to be the same thing. The only other thing is like let's look into Bootstrap. Doesn't really matter. Let's look into it, right? I'm going to do this, and then we are going to install Bootstrap, npm.js, Bootstrap. It's called React Bootstrap. It has to be this. It has to match. Okay, exact match. Okay, this was published 8 days ago, updated. So we are going to install Bootstrap. It is also another library like Tailwind CSS, SAS, Bootstrap. You have heard of it. npm install React Bootstrap. So now once I've installed it, I'm going to check my package.json. I got React Bootstrap, which is a version of 2.7.0, 2.7.0, right? Okay, I'm going to, again, from React Bootstrap, I'm going to pick out an icon, right? If you want to look into documentation, Bootstrap icons. Again, it's the same thing. The name is going to be the same, but instead of React icons, I'm going to use it from Bootstrap icons here, like Bootstrap. It has icons. So I installed React Bootstrap. So let's import and let's see what we can do. Now, React Bootstrap is not just about icons. React Bootstrap is about components. It's about components, right? React Bootstrap, most popular front-end framework. It's about components. We can have a button. We can have a forms. We can have like forms like this that we don't need to style it ourselves. It is going to do it for us. We can have different components. We can have different alerts. Everything is being provided by Bootstrap. So it is pretty famous. It is pretty famous. So what we are going to use is we are going to import a button component from React Bootstrap, and then we are going to compare that to our regular button. Let's see. Here, I'm going to use the component, and then I'm going to say click, or like I'm going to say Bootstrap button, and I'm going to create another button that is going to say normal button. Now, what's the difference? What's the difference? I don't see any difference, right? But if we inspect into this button, we see one key difference. This button has a class, right? But this button doesn't have a class. This button has a type. This button doesn't have a type. So what does that do for us? Let's see. So whenever we are using Bootstrap, the way you use Bootstrap, it uses class names. It uses class to style. But right now we don't have Bootstrap. We have React Bootstrap, right? So we need to install Bootstrap also, because Bootstrap, B-O-O-P-S-T-R-A-P. Bootstrap gives us that CSS. Bootstrap gives us that CSS. So if we only import React, Bootstrap is not going to work, right? So because button has a class, and this class we are seeing like we also installed Bootstrap, but nothing is showing any changes. It's because we need to import that CSS from Bootstrap, right? So we import that CSS. It's going to be inside Bootstrap /dist/CSS. I'll show you where it is. .css. I'll show you where it is. It is going to be under node modules, because everything you install is going to be inside of node modules. And then we are going to look into Bootstrap. What is Bootstrap? Bootstrap has this folder called dist, which is inside of this dist. We have CSS. We have so many CSS, but we are just going to grab general Bootstrap CSS. So whenever you are creating your own HTML website, just HTML, no React, whenever you are using Bootstrap, bootstrap.min.css, you import this file. You copy this line, right? You copy this line and you paste it on your HTML, and you have access to Bootstrap. But in React, it is stored inside of a node module, so we need to import that CSS. Import that CSS. So now let's see. Do we have any changes? See, I refreshed and it changed, right? My code is nothing different. I'm only importing the CSS and I have a button. If I inspect, still the same. It has a class. But now what Bootstrap gives us is this button is a component again. It gives us access to props because it's a component. right? So if we look into this button, it gives us access to props, right? It has prop types. It basically gives us access to props. And what kind of props do we have? We have props called variant. But in order to know about that props, you need to go into documentation, right? You need to go into documentation and you can see a button. Okay, we are currently looking at primary button. That is default button. We have a variant that has all of this. So if I just give them a prop variant and I give them a value of, let's say, danger, and then if I save it, the CSS changed and my style changed, right? So that is what Bootstrap does. It is very easy to style, and everything is a component again. Let's look into another component called alert. Now I know this because I've used it, but whenever you are using it, whenever you are learning it, always look into documentation, figure it out, and then use as unit, right? So let's say alert, we have alert, and then inside of alert, it can take a children, right? It can take a children, it says warning, right? If I save it, I don't need to style anything. It is giving me an alert, right? It says warning, right? Now it can have another variant. Let's say danger. Save it, it's red, right? Or if I say, I don't think it's secondary. Yes, secondary is this. Now button can be a primary button. That means it is a main button. You want someone to act on it. That's why we give it as a primary. Secondary is whenever you have two buttons side by side, one is very important and one is not so important, right? We also have a variant of link. If we link it, this button is going to be a link. So you see, like it's becoming more easier for us to style things without using CSS. We are still using CSS, but we are using a component and in a prop. That means we are using React, right? Because everything is a component. And then in component, we have state and props. And then whenever we are yes.
What is variant?
A variant is a prop, right? It's a property. So in Bootstrap, they defined that whenever we want to give them, if you look into a definition, they gave this prop. They defined a prop called variant. So it is nothing but a variant, like nothing but a prop. So variant has these different values. If you give this variant of A, it is not going to style anything, right? So hey, it is not going to style anything, right? Because there is no variant of hey, right? It is not defined. It doesn't know. But if you say it is a variant of info, which I see here, it is defined. And if I save it here, hey, this is a variant. This is a prop. What is this prop doing? It is changing the color of a button, right?
Yeah.
So we will look into if we want to, let's say, use Bootstrap, but with CSS, how would I do that? I would write button, I would write class name, and I would write button and button success. CCES success. That's the class name that Bootstrap already has it reserved. So if I save it, it's going to see whatever here variant is going to be a success. It's going to be the same thing, right? Same thing. So what it is doing is it's creating a class name of a button and a button success, and this class name has a CSS associated with it that is changing its color to green. So that's the only thing that it's doing, right? So we have a button. It is saying button success. This is the Bootstrap button. Now, if we see its CSS, let's look into CSS. Let's say button success. It is saying button has a background color of green, right? And our normal button, it also has a background color of green, right? Now it is taking that from a class. It is taking that from a class name. So it is only making things easier. So we don't have to write so much code, but it is again the same thing. Now it is creating a CSS file. Inside the CSS, it is saying dot button target that button and button dot success. And if this is button dot success, I want background color to be green. This is what it's doing. But we don't have to write this. We don't have to write CSS. We don't have to write CSS. We just have to give them a variant. This variant means it will apply a class. This class has a CSS. So that is what it's doing.
If you wanted to just adjust it a little bit, can you add some CSS to it?
Yes.
Oh, there's no
right?
way.
Huh?
Is there a
We
way
have
to
a
tweak
prop,
it a little
right?
bit?
We have a prop called style that is accessible to any component in React, right? So this is not just limited to Bootstrap. It is a React CSS property. It gives us access to CSS. So if we want to do, hey, I want to give it a margin top of 10 pixel, 10 pixel. Isn't that how you write? I don't use this style. I want to give a margin of 10, right? Yes, I have now. I have given a margin of 10 for this button, right? I want to say, hey, I want the color, text color to be red. Okay. Yes, I want to give the text color to be red. Now I can modify that button, right? Based on my needs, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But it's basically, we use Bootstrap to like really develop things fast. So we are not stuck behind writing CSS or like we are not wasting our time writing CSS. We want to like build things fast. Then we use like Bootstrap. We use Tailwind CSS. We have so many different options. But I want my main focus is you guys to be aware of it, right? You need to know like there are so many different frameworks. Tomorrow you go to work. One company might be using Tailwind CSS. You work with Tailwind CSS for 1 year. Now you go into another company and then they are using Chakra UI. Let's say that is in Chakra UI. Concept is the same. It's only how you implement it or how you use it. That's only the difference. I use Chakra UI at work, right? Now again, from Chakra UI, the another company that you might work for in the future might use Material UI, right? Now it is also going to be the same thing. It is going to have installation guide. It is going to have components. It is going to have a button. If you again see the difference between Bootstrap and Material UI is, again, you have a button, it's a component, it has a variant, right? Now variant is, if you have a variant of text, it's going to be a text. If it is content, it will be inside of a box. If it is outline, the inside of the background, there will be no background, right? If it is a primary button, it's going to, when you hover it, it's going to be a primary. Disabled is going to be disabled. Link is going to be a link, right? So there are so many libraries, like you can literally use anything, but like you need to be aware about like, hey, like even if I use Bootstrap or even if I use Metal UI or even if I use Chakra UI, everything is doing the same thing. It's just the documentation. You just need to look into documentation. Whatever it's doing, it's using React concept. It is having everything as a component. It doesn't matter you are using Bootstrap. It doesn't matter you are using Chakra UI. Everything is a component, and you can modify that component because React gives us that ability to modify style of that component. We can pass props to this component. We can create our own custom button. We can pass prop to that button, and then we can use this button to make it our own button, right? So we have that flexibility. And then you just need to be aware of so many different libraries there are. You don't need to learn every single one of them. You just need to learn one, right? Because once you know like how one library works, everything else follows the same pattern, right? For example, if you want to create a slider like this, you are going to use like documentation is here, right? Now what you want to do, whatever you want to achieve, you are going to modify this documentation. You are going to copy this, paste it on your code, and you are going to modify it based on your need. Any questions, concerns? When you look into Chakra UI, I'll show you the similar things. Same with button, right? It's again like I use Chakra UI at work. It's again button is a component, right? Now instead of a variant in Chakra UI, we have a prop called color scheme. That means whatever color we give, it takes that color. That's the only difference. But it is again a prop, right? It is a component, right? and then in React, everything is a component, and we can, in a component can take props. So that's the only difference. And then everything is using CSS, right? You have a box. You can have a box. Box is nothing but a div that has certain padding and that has certain width or margin. And then you have something like, let's say, a checkbox. Yes, in HTML you have checkbox, but it's just easier, right? It's a component. That means we can modify it based on our need, right? And you don't have to be stuck with writing CSS, so you can develop it fast. You can use, once you know React, you can use so many libraries that uses the React, right? That means you are not wasting your time creating your own component or like creating your own writing CSS. I know CSS. I still look into documentation all the time for CSS. I also don't know CSS fully, but I use these components. Like I'm very comfortable. I understand like what's happening under the hood. But like when I know like one library, I'm able to implement or I'm able to work in different libraries that is similar to this. Now, tomorrow, if somebody like you have an interview and they're going to say, hey, we have a code stack, we use Bootstrap. Are you familiar with Bootstrap? You're going to say, yeah, I'm familiar with Bootstrap. If they say, hey, we also use Chakra UI, are you familiar with Chakra UI? You can say, hey, like it is similar to Bootstrap. I've used it once. I'm very comfortable working on, right? So do you guys have any questions on this, on general CSS library? It's basically the same thing everywhere. You can use any library, any CSS library. It is going to be the same thing. It is going to have a prop. Prop is going to have some value. You can look into their documentation. But if you want to give it your own style, you can use the style prop that React provides. So anything that is a component, you have access to props that React provides. That means you can use any library, any component, that component will have these props. That means you can use this prop, any component, because it's provided by React, right? React.css properties. Okay, any questions, concern? Do you guys understand this? My goal here is to not teach you Bootstrap, but like to teach you or like make you aware that, hey, there's this library, and then in order to implement it, this is how I should implement it. I need to look into documentation, not just Bootstrap, like any library. If you guys have no questions, we're gonna look into style components. But if you guys have any questions about Bootstrap or any other CSS library, feel free to ask, right? We are just gonna look into style component. This is going to be style component is going to, it might scare you. It won't scare you at all because it will give you power to write your own CSS. Here, right now we are using a component that somebody else wrote for us. Now we are going to create our own component that is going to take that CSS. That means instead of using Bootstrap, we can do the same thing, but we can create it by ourselves. So we'll go ahead and look into React, not React, style component.
Can we mix up the other JavaScript library in this React?
Yes, unless if you're
like some JavaScript or some jQuery, like a slider,
yes,
carousel,
yes,
gallery.
100%. I can, you see, like I can use Bootstrap, I can use Chakra UI, and I can use Tailwind CSS in one app. All three, doesn't really matter, right? I can use it. But at your job, like they want to follow some pattern, they want to follow some design guides, right? So they are going to be using only one of these things. They're not going to be like, hey, use Bootstrap and use Chakra UI. They're going to be using one because they need to have that design guide. They need to have their own style guides. For example, if you see, let's say, if you see this, you are not going to see like, you are going to see the same theming, you are going to see same kind of button, you are going to see similar kind of button everywhere throughout there, similar kind of button, right? this button is just a little bit bigger, but it's the same thing. So they are going to have that style guide. They want it to be uniform across the website. They want it to be like similar throughout the website. They don't want to like modify everything. So they are going to follow one style guideline. So they are going to use only one library for that. So it can be either Bootstrap, it can be either Chakra UI, it can be either Tailwind, it can be either Material UI, anyone. But like once you are comfortable with any one of these, you'll be comfortable with everything, every one of them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's look into style components. Now from Bootstrap, we are going to move into writing our own CSS. So here's simple thing. We again went to the documentation. We are going to install npm install or yarn add styled components. Don't miss an S. If you miss an S, that's a different package. Style components. Okay, let's see. Okay, we have style components installed. We're going to package JSON. We have style component. There we go. Now what style component does is very fancy, right? I'll create a folder called styles. And yes.
Why didn't you use the exact same command line that's provided there?
This one? It's just reference, right? I can use this. Instead of dependency, I think it's going to put it under save. I think we can do the same thing. That's like we use save because we want it to be saved on our local environment, but I don't want to save it outside of this project. If I go outside of this project, I don't want to have style components, right? I don't want to put it on my machine, right? I just want it to be in this project, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm not using that. For example, I have app, and then inside of app, I have a React Router demo. So if I go inside, I have access to style component, but if I come outside, I don't have access to style component. I'm not saving that locally. That's why.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll create a button, right? So in JavaScript, whenever you save a file, you can give anything, right? Right now I'm giving styled just because I want to know whenever I look into my code base, I want to be able to say, hey, this is a component. I made it using style component. Or I can say button.js. Doesn't really matter. Like it's your choice. So it's going to be a component, but in style component, the way we do it is pretty different. We have a syntax, right? We have a syntax. I'll show you the syntax, and every time we write style component, it is going to be the same syntax. I'm going to create a button, right? In order to create a button, I'm going to save that as a component. I need to import styled from style component. I need this to create style component. And button equals to, I'm going to use that styled, and I'm going to give dot, right? Now this is syntax. Like anytime you write a style component, this is a syntax. Whenever I give it a style, now it gave me access to all the HTML elements. Every HTML elements you can think of. You want to think of a div, I have access to a div. You want to think of a navigation, I have access to navigation. You want to think of a list, I have access to list. You want to think of a button, I have access to a button, right? All HTML elements, I have access to all HTML elements. If you want to give me any HTML elements, any HTML element. Header, I have access to that. Footer, I have access to that, right? Anchor tag, I have access to that. But for now, I'm creating a button. So I'm going to say, I want a button. And we are going to give 2 backticks and a semicolon. That's a syntax. Anytime you write a style component, you store it in a variable, and this is the syntax. If you want to style a button, you write a button. If you want to style a div, you write a div. right? And then you store that in a variable. Let's say button style or button, doesn't really matter. Now we write CSS inside of that backticks. We write plain CSS. No Sass, no Bootstrap, plain CSS. Let's say for this button, I want the color inside to be white. This is plain CSS. I want background color to be green. I want a padding of 12 pixels. Plain CSS. You see, whenever I'm using style prop, I need to give comma, but here no, it's a plain CSS. It's what you write in a CSS file. And then we have border radius of, let's say, 20 pixels, right? Now this is a component. Now this is a variable. Button style is a variable that is storing a style button. We need to export it to use it anywhere else. So whenever I have a button, let's say I want to use a button, I'm going to import that button, which is button styled. And I'm going to say click. This is the button. And once I refresh, I have a button, right? It is taking all of this. Now, if I change it to red, it's a red button, right? But border radius, I think it's too much. Let's say 10 pixel, 10 pixel, right? So this is how we write a style component. But right now you see the only difference here, I don't think it's a difference. Whenever we are using Bootstrap, we are using a button that Bootstrap provided us, right? Now we can name it as a button, doesn't really matter. Let's name it as a button. This can be a button, right? We renamed it as a button. Now this is the problem. Source component, import button from style component, button button, button.styled, button. Let's see. Button.styled icons. No module build failed. Identify button has already been declared. Oh, we have a button from Bootstrap, right? It's the same name. I'm going to do this. And now you see what's the difference between this button and this button. Bootstrap is also applying style and creating as a component and giving us that component. But here we created our own button that has its own style and it is now a component. Now we can use it similar to Bootstrap. Now, if you want to use a style like prop, we have access to style prop. We have access to like on-click function. Yes, because it's a button. We have access to on-click function. Whenever I click on-click, do something, we can do that, right? So this is what style component does. It creates a CSS into a component. Now, what's the benefit of it is, let's say you have same kind of button everywhere. I gave you an example of NFL, right? You see sign up, right? Two different buttons. It has a width of different, it has a different width. You go to marketplace, you again see there's a button, buy now, but everything is using one single button, right? Everything is using one single button with same style. They are only changing certain style. We are going to change that as well. We are going to make it dynamic. We are going to make it so dynamic that we can change it based on our needs. Let's change it. Let's say we want to make a color dynamic. We want to pass a color here so it can give a color here. So what we can do is, because it's React, because it's style components, because it's called CSS in JS, because we can write JavaScript in CSS. So inside of a render, this is JSX, right? This is JSX. What is JSX? JSX means JavaScript and HTML. JavaScript and XML, right? XML means HTML. now JSS CS in JSS means now we have CS in JSX. That means we have access to JavaScript. We can modify CS using JavaScript, but not HTML. We are not talking about HTML. That's why we have CS in JS. Now in order to do that, we need to make it as a prop, right? Instead of giving a value, we are gonna give it a prop, right? So in JavaScript, we have something const, let's say string equals to, we have this function called hello, and we can use this, and we can give it as, let's say, const second string 2 world. It has a string. Now we want to use the string inside of this string, so we can call that string 2, right? You guys know this, right? You guys know this, right? And so now if we console log, let's look here. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to see this here. Here, I have this 2 string. Now I'm going to console log string, right? String 1. It is going to give me hello world, right? I'm accessing world through a variable, right? So it is the same thing that we are doing here. Now we are going to give a prop, and this is going to be a function. It is a callback function. It is going to take a function. It takes up props. Now we want this value to be props.color, right? It can be anything. Do you want to give it as a prop dot anything else? It can be anything else. But here, let's say color. Now you have access to that color, right? It is a string, right? Instead of color, let's say prop dot hello, right? Here now you have access to hello. If you give hello red black, you save it. Let's see the text color is black now, right? From hello. If you give it white, save it, it's white, right? So we are creating our own custom prop, right? So because it's a color, we can say like, hey, like let's put it as a color. So now this is going to be a color. So now this is not a CSS color. This is our prop, the prop that we created here, right? Any confusion on that? Do you guys get it? Now we can do the same thing in background, right? We can say it's a callback function. It takes a props, and this is going to be props.bg color. Let's say bg color. I just named it bg color. I can name it anything I want. Now I'll give a bg color of, let's say, blue. Now if I see, it took the value of this through a prop and then put that value here, right? Background color value, put that value here, right? So now we are able to use JavaScript in CSS. Now we can use this button anywhere, and the button can have different border, different padding, different background, different color, but we are using the same component, right? We don't need to create another button that has a different color, right? Any questions, concerns? Do you guys not understand this, or do you guys understand this? Here we can also say, we can destructure it, right? We can say, I want color. Here we can directly say, I want that color. It's going to be the same thing, right? We can destructure it. We want say bg color, and we can say bg color, right? Right. Now I can create the same thing downside, and I can say this is button 2. I can give it a color of red. Background can be white. I have another, right? See? So what happened is, with style component, now you have the power to create your own CSS with your own prop. You can use this anywhere throughout your app, but it's just one component. You can, anytime you are creating a button, you can give them their own value, but it's going to be one single component, right? Do you guys have any questions on this? Do you guys understand this? If you don't
Yes.
understand this, go ahead.
Don't we have to add some browser compatibility code for certain properties like border radius?
Border radius.
Like we used to add a WebKit, Moz, and O, like for some browser to support, because this might not support for some browser, like.
You have access to everything, right?
Oh.
WebKit, you have access to entire CSS.
Oh, okay.
And then you can also, like animation, you can say, hey, I want to make it as a prop. I want to make it as a prop, and then I want to be able to, let's say I'm going to say it as animate, and then I'm going to say animate. Now I can use this, and I can use different value wherever I want. Like what values does Moz.animation have? Let's see, what values does it have? Let's see here. It has, we can use alternate, backward, anywhere, anything, anywhere, but we are using the same component again. We are not going to write another button code, or we are not going to write any other thing, right? So we are achieving anything that we want using one single component for a button. Now this button can be 5 different buttons through our code base, 1,000 different buttons through our code base, and we can modify it based on our need with just one component.
And how to deal with pseudo classes?
With pseudo classes, I think
like
you have.
If I want to hover this button and make it the green background.
Right, on that one, whenever you hover, again, like you have access to style, right? You can use style prop, or again, if there are some features that you can't access using style component, for this component, you can give a class name again. You can give it as class name of, let's say, button home. You can target this class. You can write the CSS pseudo class, anything, or you can also use style component and say, okay, whenever I hover, right, I want background. I'm not sure on the syntax. No, I don't think this is the way, but background color, no, background color, good. This accept.
I think adding class name will be the best.
We need to be able to access. I think we have access. No, we have access to this, but this is styles. So we should be able to achieve this. One sec. Because we have style property given it by React. We give it inside 2 bracket. Let's say we have background color red. It's red, right? We are able to access that. Whenever we hover it, I think this is hover. Not sure. By Mozilla animation, we can access again the WebKit, more anything WebKit related animation, right? We can target anything related to that. We should be able to, let's see, cover. This should be, let's see, background color should be black. Let's see. No, there is something. I just can't remember, but there is something.
Was it ampersand? I think it was ampersand for
like this and hover. We have something like this, but I just can't remember. We use it sometime whenever we don't have access to certain properties. For example, we use chocolate UI at work. Sometimes some property we can't access it, so we use like style, and then we give them something like this. It should work, but I'm not sure. I think I might be doing the syntax wrong. Let's see if it is getting this hover property. White, background red. It is getting background red, but it is not getting that hover property. Let's see. Pseudo class in style prop. Inline styling CSS. Let's see. It's using class name. Hover true. This using state. Okay, hover color. Okay, let's see. We did the same thing right before. Hover. Let's just say color. Black. Nope. Nope. Refresh. Nope. It's not working. But yeah, we can access something like this, but I'm not sure why it's it's storing it as an it's color, yeah, color inside of a style. We have color. See, we use an object with this is 1, this is 2. Update. This has been getting fewer boats. Emotions.
Is it affecting with that code? Because it's using single code and we are using.
I don't know. The code doesn't affect anything. But let's see. What's the let's see, emotion. Emotion uses styled component, style CSS. It's using Radium. That's why they are using another library that supports hover. Let's see, pseudo class in style component. Let's see how we can use that. Before and after classes, pseudo class style components. Let's see. I know that you can use and hover. We apply hover. Okay, and hover is okay. We can use this and hover. Okay, yeah, we can use that in style components. Okay, so we can say background color should be aquamarine. Hover, yeah, this works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you can do it using style. I am not sure why it's not working here. Maybe I'm doing some syntax wrong. Because it basically supports everything, right? But it's just the syntax. Sometimes if you are using any WebKit, you need to put it inside of a quotation mark. If you are using suppose background color, you don't give the dash. It needs to be camel case. But similar, like I think I was doing a syntax wrong. But in order to achieve pseudo class,
maybe it was because of the comma. There was a comma after.
Comma? Really?
Yeah, you had a comma like right before the hover, right before you define hover, there was a comma and there was red, right? Yeah, like you have
This one?
background color equals
No, we need comma. We need comma for because whenever we are writing, let's say text align, let's say center, we need comma whenever we are writing or like left. Yeah, because it's React, right? We need comma, but in CSS we don't need comma.
Yeah, I mixed it up. My bad.
Yeah, that's fine. Now this is working. This is not because yeah, but basically yeah, I think I might be doing some syntax wrong. But basically you got it. We can use pseudo class inside of a style component. Any questions, concerns? I think you guys had a pretty good understanding of this, right? Because style component is nothing more than regular CSS, but it is stored inside of a syntax. So now, for example, if you are writing another, let's say header, you're making a style.header, it's the same syntax, right? Backtext, you write your CSS inside of a backtext. But the value we can give it as a function, we can pass a prop, and then we can change that value right here. This is what Bootstrap was doing, right? It was giving variant, right? Now we can say, right, instead of color, we can say variant, right? We can say it as a variant. We can save it. Now here, instead of color, we can say variant, right? We can say variant. That is what Bootstrap was doing, variant, right?
And how to deal with these properties for responsive view?
For responsiveness, you can use media queries inside, right? You can use media queries inside.
Oh, we can use media query as well?
Yes. Okay. Yes. You can use regular CSS, every regular CSS inside, because this is regular CSS. If you copy this and put it on a CSS file, it will work, right? Except for this, because this is JavaScript, right? This is JavaScript, except for this. Yeah. So that is that. So whenever we have a header, we can pass some variable. Let's just say background color again, anything, and then we can use this whenever we are using a header tag. We can just wrap everything inside of a header tag that is supposed to be inside of this header component, right? We can do the same thing with nav, right? Explore fonts. We can create our own nav bar, and then say style.nav, right? We are targeting that nav. Double backticks. Inside of a double backticks, we write our CSS, right? So for example, after CSS, here we can use this, and then we can write this here, right? And we can use this nav. Instead of nav, we can use nav, right? Not Bootstrap, our own component. We can use nav, right? So now it is wrapping inside nav, right? See, it's still the same, right? So we have that power to like change, create our own component that can take different CSS values and change it. I think we are at time, but if you guys have any question, I'd be happy to answer it.
Nitish, can you share us the PDF as well? The one we
Yes. Yes. What I can do is I can. Okay, I had one more slide about style components. It just makes us easy. We don't have to write class name. We can easily modify it. We can apply dynamic styling, and then the maintenance is very easy, right? One component everywhere. I'll share this PDF on the same repo. I'll upload that in the same repo. So, see. Repository, demo, add file, upload. Choose a file, text uploading. Or did I do it too early? Coding commit. Wait. Okay, there you go. You have the PDF here, right? You have the PDF there. All right. All right. Yeah, guys, like just practice. Look into like I showed you about Bootstrap. You guys can go ahead and look into like Material UI. I showed you React icons. You can practice Font Awesome, right? Font Awesome icons. Try Font Awesome icons. Everything is there in documentation. If you go to npm.js, it will tell you how you can install it, right? React icons or anything else like Material UI, Material Forged, Material button. You have like all of these options, right? Material UI buttons. You can install it, see how you can use it. They give you an example and use it on your React app project. Just practice it. So just be familiar with one, and then you'll be able to work with any. But style component is the exception, right? Because we can pass JavaScript. So. All right, guys, any questions? Otherwise, I think we are good to end the session. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to take them, happy to answer them. I was thinking to do a small project here, but like there's no time, so maybe some other day. Another thing, I have a session tomorrow again. So what I'm doing is I'll teach you any topic that you have problem about. So if you have any problem about any topic, I think now is the right time to tell me so I can decide the topic for tomorrow.
Could you maybe just talk through a little bit about your process, your thought process of a project, or how you think about how to build the pages and everything?
Okay, let's say thought process. Do you guys like want to like basically practice some React questions that I was asked in the interview? I have like I always keep a list, right? I always have like this interview, right? I was asked before. I always keep these documents, what questions I was asked. I was in Southwest Airlines, third round of interview. These are the questions they asked me. I always keep that, right? And this was the question that got me this job, right? I always have this record of my interview questions. So if you want to just look into it, go through it, what kind of questions they ask, what kind of projects they ask you to do, I'd be happy to do that as well. So
Yes, I think that would be helpful.
okay,
That's good.
I can also create format the questions properly and send it along your way tomorrow after class also. Any other thing, any specific React topic that you are still confused about?
Nitish, are you
Yes.
saying that we would have class tomorrow? Because usually on Fridays we do not have.
Oh, you don't have
the
class on Fridays?
Oh no, we don't.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Sorry, but like next session, I can go through this, right?
Cool.
So like if you have any specific React topics, for example, if you want to revisit context API or like if you want to revisit hooks, like I'd be happy to like if you have any questions, if you have any confusion on those topics or any other React topics.
Yeah, can we like we haven't done the TypeScript yet,
TypeScript.
but
Okay.
yeah, it would be great if we can have like some like general understanding of the TypeScript.
Wait, what we can do is like we can convert a JS React project into TypeScript project. I can create a demo project and we can convert. That way you will be you'll see it what's the difference and okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't understand the API topic.
API's topic.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. Any other topic? Any other React topic? Any other JavaScript topic? Any other web development topic in general, like API? Right?
Yes. Last time you taught us about the test plans, and I recently came
which one?
across like the tests jest and the React testing library, and I recently came across the hooks like before each, after all, and stuff like that.
These are
So
function.
yeah, I was wondering if we could like set up an example for those as well.
Okay. Okay. Or like testing our hooks, right?
Yes.
Okay. Testing hooks. Okay. We can do that. Any other thing? Any other topic that you don't understand? But you guys are very comfortable with hooks, right? Like writing use effect and use state hooks, right? Because that's like the core concept of React, right? I use that use effect and use state every single day. That's why. Okay.
We can,
Okay.
but we are not fast enough like you.
No, like I'm not fast enough. I am pressured to complete the task, right? So in that during that pressure, like I have to.
So if you can do it in 2 seconds, then it takes time like 2 minutes.
I mean you can take
minutes.
time. Like whenever I'm given a task to perform something, I take a task. I take a whole day, right? So I have that whole day to figure it out and then to apply that apply solution and then like send a PR. So how comfortable are you guys with